I, Canuto G. Molina,
I, Canuto G. Molina,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution and laws
and the Constitution and laws
of the State of New Mexico,
of the State of New Mexico,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office
of
school board member
member,
on which I am
of which I am
about to enter,
about to enter,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
While they're signing, can I get a picture, Mr. Guadiana, Ms. Murillo, and Mr. Molina, so we can put it on our Facebook page? I haven't taken one of you all yet. As new board members, maybe.
Right here, sir.
I think Mr. That one's at the sign, right?
Okay. Yeah. Right here.
Okay, that's okay.
No worries, ma'am. Sorry about that. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You want to be in the picture with us?
Yeah.
Sure, go for it.
I think it'd be good for him.
I think it'd be great. Except that. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. Huh? I don't think so. I think it's okay. Oh, a little bit.
Probably okay.
That's okay.
I didn't have to go up there. I'd have broke that down. Shadows or no.
Come on, okay?
Yes, sir.
This time moves to 3A, entertain a motion for approval of agenda items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, second? Second. Second by Mr. Guadiana. Any questions on the agenda?
Mr. President, I have a question. At the last board meeting, I had asked that we have the board retreat on the agenda, and it's not here. So can we make sure next time, for our next meeting, we can have it on that?
Yeah, I think in superintendent report, were you going to say something, Joyce, about that? Or
No, those are work sessions.
for the work session?
I was going to.
Okay.
About the retreat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
To clarify that, is that the two work sessions that you had already scheduled? Because this is outside of that.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item B, approval of the January 18th special board meeting minutes. Entertain a motion. I'll move. Motion by Mr. Guadiana, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Murillo. Any questions on those minutes? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item C, approval of the January 24th board meeting minutes. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Murillo. Any questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. This moves us to policy service update and review by Mr. Kennedy.
Okay, members of the board, Mr. President, we did invite Mr. John Kennedy to come and give us a presentation on us moving forward with the policy services. We did talk about it at the last meeting, so Mr. Kennedy, if you would please come up to the podium.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm John Kennedy. In the last 6 months, I became the director of the policy service for the School Boards Association following Don Williams' death. Don died untimely last spring, and I've practiced school law in New Mexico since 1977. Started out with the Attorney General's office and then worked with Cuddy and McCarthy, at the time Simons, Cuddy, and Friedman. So I've worked a lot in policy development. So when Don died, I had been the attorney for the School Boards Association generally for many years. And so Joe Guillen requested that I help him by taking over the policy service. So I have done so, and I'm here because Cobre is interested in beginning the process of joining the policy service and developing the model policies that are consistent with, I think it's 81 school districts now in the state of New Mexico. The policy services program creates school board policies that are consistent with national standards, national premises, and national principles for school operations and governance. The idea of having the policies numbered and sequenced similar to the national is so that there is consistency and uniformity, and it's also an ease of reference. So to the extent that the Cobre Schools is beginning this process, it would be my recommendation that the board authorize beginning that process itself. I understand you do 2 readings on adoption of policy. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. The idea of having a multiple reading sequence is that you initially consider adopting a policy, and then you get the reactions from the board members, the administration, members of the public. You have another meeting at which you consider those comments, those criticisms, those suggestions, and then adopt a policy should you choose to do so. Maybe you don't adopt a policy, but it's a considered and reasoned way of proceeding with creating your governance documents. So to the extent that you already have a draft of the policy manual that the School Boards Association proposes to govern how your board operates. I haven't looked at all of your existing policies, but the manual is comprehensive and creates a system that is fairly easy to access. It's easy to search. The search function, I think, is particularly useful so that you can find a single word if you want to, but it's also set up so that your policies are uploaded to the web, and there's a web master in Arizona who assists in making sure that when your policies are changed, they're changed not only in your hard manuals, but also on the website so that people can access them remotely. So to the extent that it would be my recommendation to the board that you begin this process, I would appreciate any questions you might have, any comments you might have about using a model policy system like that, and assuring that the way in which you go about it is not only consistent with the uniformity in the manual, but also the desires of this board. Because if they're not policies that work for you, they're not useful. And I don't want that to happen. So,
Mr. Can I just have a couple of questions?
yes,
In going forward, so how many different sections would there be if we're doing 2 meetings? So I would assume that at meeting A or meeting 1, we would read so many sections, and then meeting 2, we would review a section and maybe introduce a new section, or how would that look going forward?
well, let me just say, it is up to the board to decide how big a bite you want to take at once. It is certainly not my recommendation to lay on you 100 pages of documents and say, here, rubber stamp that. That's not my practice. The way in which I recommend you go about it is to there are 12 classifications of the model policies. And let me just read them for you, actually. They start out with foundations and basic commitments, then school board governance and operations, then general school administration. And this is actually I think in your draft materials that you've already received. Have you seen these? Okay. I will make sure you get these. I believe that I saw a draft of these on the materials I received before I came down here. But nevertheless, there are 12 classifications. You can take 1 or 2 or 3 of those at once and consider them and move them forward. To the extent that when you get down to personnel and students, you may want to just take each of those at as a single unit at a board meeting. So I would think that it will take probably 6 months to get all of these model policies adopted. You don't want to rush it. You want to make sure that you don't feel like you've been railroaded into adopting something you haven't had a chance to really review and consider. Not my style. So to the extent that there's a lot here, it's a fairly thick policy manual when it's done. It's probably 2 to 3 inches thick. It takes some time and it takes some consideration by the board to make sure that those are what you want. Because if it isn't what you want, I don't want it. So to the extent that I would recommend probably taking the first 2 or 3 of these at once, but when you get down to dealing with personnel and you get down to dealing with students, you probably want to have a single meeting over those. And so perhaps within 6 months, you will have the entire set ready to adopt as a formal set. I don't recommend you adopt anything until you have a complete manual. So it's a big chunk. It's a big bite. But it is worthwhile to do it because it creates for you a easily accessible, uniform, comprehensive set of policies that you can then operate under.
You're saying that don't adopt them until you have a complete manual? Is that what you just?
That would be my recommendation. You don't adopt anything until you have a complete manual.
And then we could have like our 2 readings of the complete manual.
Well, no.
No.
You will already have had, what I would recommend is maybe you take sections
Okay.
A, B, and C, which are the basic commitments, the governance and operations in general school administration. Take those at one meeting. Consider those in the first reading, a second reading, and then go on to the next set. By the time you have the 2 readings of the entire 12 classifications of model policies, you then have had 2 readings of them all, and then you are ready to adopt. Okay?
I
Does that make
understand.
sense
Yeah.
to the board?
So I
Okay.
believe that right now, Ms. Davis, correct me if I'm wrong, but everybody only has, well, most people, because I know you still have a notebook for the 2 new ones, but we have it on a flash drive, right? We don't have hard copies of it, but you're recommending that people get hard copies of it because that's the best way to review.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
recommend hard copies.
So Ms. Davis, if we can work on
I'm a dinosaur and I like to see pieces of paper.
I agree, I like to write on them.
But yeah, I mean, allowing you to mark things up, put question marks, say, geez, I'm going to put a star next to this because I'm going to ask a question. You need to have that facility in order to assure that your consideration of all of these policies is carefully done. And then each member gets to raise their own questions, gets to ask their own concerns about how they're written. And by the end of that process, which will probably take into the middle of this year, you will have a good set of uniform policies. So go ahead, sir.
So can you discuss a little bit the public comment period section that you're talking about? I would assume that'd probably take the most time since you'd mentioned something about comments from the public or suggestions from the public, right?
Well, when you adopt policies, you consider them in an open meeting. You have to do that. I mean, these are public documents, these are public governance documents, and I would assume you will have public comment at those meetings as well. And taking public comment and public suggestions is one of the things boards do at every meeting. Does that govern how you operate? Does that govern how you adopt them? Not necessarily, but some of the suggestions the public might make may be very relevant and useful to you. So you consider what you feel is important.
So we would take those comments in the public comment section, but could we also take them, as they come along, maybe via email or something
Sure.
to that effect? Okay.
Yes. And as you go along, my recommendation tonight is simply to begin this process. I would also recommend that the superintendent be the clearinghouse for comments from the public, so that if people want to email you, they send the comments to the superintendent so that they can be centrally logged in and determined whether or not those are relevant comments that should be presented to the board. And the board president would probably also review those. But to the extent that you have a system for creating policy, you should follow that system. But this is a big project. It's going to take some time, and it's going to take a lot of thought and careful consideration. And I want you to use that time and that consideration to be sure that by the end of this process, the Cobre Consolidated School District has the policies it wants. These are uniform policies, and they are numbered consistent with a numbering system that the National School Boards Association created probably 20 years ago. Personally, I don't like the numbering system. I think it's cumbersome. But it is the model right now, and one of the things I may go through as Policy Service Director with Joe Guillen is the process of renumbering the policies so that they're easier to access. Because ease of access has to be one of your priorities, right? So to the extent that that's something in the future, adopting these using the current numbering system doesn't harm you. It simply is, perhaps I will, at a later time, give you a template which renumbers them all and shows you that policy BCA becomes policy 1.7. Does that make sense? Okay. So, again, it's, excuse me, it's a major task for you to take on, but I think that it is a worthwhile task because using a uniform set of policies, a consistent set of policies, and a set of policies that other districts are using as well, I think assists you in the long run to make sure that you have covered all the bases and that what you're using is sound, reliable, defensible, and legal.
And more current.
And current. Yes, sir.
I had a couple of questions. One is, I assume we're going to put the drafts of the recommended policies on the web where the public can access them?
That's what I was going to ask Mr. Kennedy. What is your recommendation in order to solicit public input? Do boards generally put the sections that are going to be reviewed on the web so that the public could review them at the same time that the board is reviewing them if they choose to?
I think that makes sense if that's what you normally do when you're adopting policy. Is that how you do it?
We haven't done it in a long time, so.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
I think in the past,
Yes, that's the way we do it. They normally put it there, and then also there's a news release that probably goes out, and it also says that you know, we're reviewing policy, and ours are numbering system, not lettering systems.
Right.
So we're reviewing policies number so.
Right.
Or we're going to change policy so. Give us your comments.
yeah.
So,
And, you know, then you set a clearinghouse up in the administration to receive those comments and present them to the board as appropriate.
Okay, and.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and that clearinghouse is not a filtering, it's not a filtering exercise. All the comments will come to the board.
Well, I wouldn't say they have to come to the board legally, no. But again, it's one of those things where if somebody is making an inappropriate comment or, you know, making vile comments that shouldn't be considered by the board, shouldn't be presented to the board in public, I think the administration has the ability to say, no, that's not going to the public.
Okay.
You
Using that
see what
criteria,
I'm saying?
With that criteria, I agree. But
Yeah.
if it's a matter of, well, you know, I don't like that version of that, then I would hope that would not be filtered out and that would come.
No, no. And, you know, getting the pulse of the community on changing something as major as your governance documents is what you want.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, you all know how to do that. You've done that over the years. It's just, you need to make sure it's orderly, it's reasonable, and it's legal. Okay? Does that satisfy you?
Yes, but
Okay.
one other question. Our
Yes, sir.
policies are substantially outdated, and there might be some imminent need for a policy to go into effect a little bit earlier than waiting for the rest of the documents. Would that be something that we could consider? I like the idea of waiting till the very end. I think that's the most substantial way to do it because many of the policies are interrelated, and it's good to have a complete set.
Yeah.
But there's some cases where there may be some safety issues involved, protocols regarding certain activities that are now new. Certainly, COVID has made a great deal of changes.
Sure.
So, if there is an imminent need for.
Yeah, you want my
change-
reaction? My reaction to that is, if there is an imminent need, you could adopt something on a tentative basis.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay? Or it could be adopted as regulation by the administration. So to the extent, I mean, sometimes policies are a simple statement of policy. The board finds that, and you know, it's a three-sentence policy. The administration then takes that policy and creates regulations to actually implement it on the site basis. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's, semantically, I would think that's procedures.
It may be.
Yeah, okay.
It may be. And, you know, we're talking in the abstract.
Yeah.
But to the extent that, yes, if there's something that needs to be adopted or needs to be addressed immediately simply because of local circumstances, I would say adopt it tentatively, pending the full adoption of the manual. Make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
And I can also see where we're going to have to, we're going to have to probably meet several times in a work session to get these things going.
Yes. No, this is a major project. And it's a major project that none of you want to feel like it's being crammed down your throats or being rushed. So when I say it may take till the middle of the year to get it done, that's just my speculation. It may take longer, or it may be quick. It depends on how good you are at consideration of changes. And, you know, some boards are better than others at making changes. And you just have to take your own pulse, right? If you want to adopt a single section to start, there's nothing legally that says you can't do that. My recommendation, though, is you wait until the end, because perhaps a policy at the very end affects something that you considered early on, and you may want to go revisit it. Oh, there I am. You know, to the extent that this is, this should be an easy process for you. It shouldn't be a difficult process. It should be one of those things that the board does on a periodic basis. The law, state regulation, requires that you review your policy manual once a year. How much boards give attention to that requirement varies greatly. But when you're considering a massive overhaul of your policy manual, this is something you really should treat seriously and take some time and make sure that everyone on the board, the administration, has the understanding of what you're doing and that it fits for you. Okay? Other questions?
Any other questions?
I have one question. You referenced a state law that the policy needs to be reviewed once a year. What is that statute? Do you know offhand?
I don't have it off the top of my head. It's not in statute, it's in state regulation adopted by PED. Mm-hmm. And the PED regulations are compiled in the New Mexico Administrative Code. So if you see reference at the bottom of these policies that says NMAC 6 point something, that's a state regulation adopted by PED. So in the New Mexico Administrative Code, there is a provision requiring that local school boards review and consider updates of their policy manuals on an annual basis. And I would suspect, and this is just a guess, that it is in NMAC 6.29 or 6.30, because those are the regulations that deal with local school board exercise of powers and duties, okay? But you can do a search. If you get into NMAC, you can do a search in Chapter 6 for policy updates and see what you get. And then you should be able to find it.
Thank you.
Okay? So again, and each one of these policies, as they come down, will have references at the bottom. They may reference a statute on personnel. They may reference a statute on student discipline. They may reference a regulation on procedure for suspension or expulsion of students, that sort of thing. So to the extent that you not only get policies that govern how you do things, you get the references you can look back at to determine that you're consistent with state law and state regulation. Okay? And there are also references that say this policy refers to or is consistent with or should be read together with another policy. So it may review or refer back to a different policy in a different section so that you can look at both together and know what the total picture is. Because having the total picture of this massive group of policies is really the only way you can make sense out of it. Sir?
I think that's one of the greatest aspects of the services you guys are providing. And that gets updated then annually in terms of any changes to the administrative code or to statute?
If there are changes to the administrative code that affect the model policies, you'd get a notice of that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, and the legislature is finishing up their short session this week. One of the things I'll be doing with Joe Guillen is reviewing anything that the short session of the legislature adopts that may need to be sent out to you as either regulation, policy change, or simply an alert to give you a heads up so that you are aware of what the powers that be in Santa Fe are doing that might affect you. Is that right? That good? Okay. Other questions?
Well-
Mr. Kennedy, we do have 2 board members. Can you just let the board know what the policy services would cost the district as well?
The costs are in, if you flip to the next couple of slides, one more, there it is. Okay, if you join this policy service, the monthly cost is $385 a month. So it's a total on an annual basis of $4,620. You're going to be responsible for initial expenses, my travel time and stuff to get the first set put together, and that generally costs about $1,000. So preparation is a flat $1,000 once they're drafted for 10 books. So each board member would have a book, and then 6 final copies of the manual for each member in the administration. So to the extent that these are the costs, it isn't very expensive. But you end up with a set of reliable, consistent policies that you can count on to keep you up to speed. Okay?
And the district is able to make additional copies should we need some beyond what's provided,
yes.
correct? Okay.
Oh, yes. The only thing we require as the policy service is if it's on your website, you make it protected so that people can't go in and change things themselves. You want to make sure, and that's how you will receive them from the webmaster that controls the policy service. She'll send them to you, and they are protected so that no one can go in and just make changes themselves, which you don't approve. Okay?
But will they be able to be, will they have a search engine then?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the whole point.
Yep.
You know, the point is to make them useful, accessible, and defensible, right?
Yes.
So that everybody is working on the same page. I like that. I think you like that.
Absolutely.
And to the extent that, you know, it's a system that's now, Joe Guillen and Don Williams started this process probably 10 or 12 years ago. And so the model policy manuals were actually started in Arizona. Don Williams was an attorney from Arizona, but he was licensed in New Mexico. He came over and spoke with Joe Guillen about adapting a uniform set of policies to New Mexico school districts. The Arizona system was based on the National School Boards Association system. So there's a consistent flow and trend toward getting uniformity and consistency in policies that has worked out well for New Mexico. Sir?
Is there a school that you can name off the top of your head so we can maybe get on the website and poke around there and kind of just, you know, see?
To see what they look like?
Yes, sir.
Ooh, let me think. I'm sorry? I would say Las Cruces. Yeah. And Silver maybe. I'm not sure. I don't have the list in front of me of all of the, but there's, if you go to the New Mexico School Boards Association, you can find that list, to find the list of school districts that are using the policy service. Okay?
That'll give you the list of all the school districts in the state and which ones are on the policy service and which ones aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. And Joe Guillen keeps that list up to date, so it should be, yeah, there is the back of this. Here. My man, he has the list.
That's the one that they just gave out, right there.
Yeah. At the recent school boards convention, Joe Guillen's put out a list of the 76 school districts that subscribe to the policy service. We have that list here. You can make a copy of it and see. Silver is one of them.
Is Deming in there?
Deming is not. Cobre is in process. But you can look at this list and then get on the website for those school districts and look at what the model policy system looks like, okay?
Thank you.
So you have it here. Other questions?
Any other questions?
Are you comfortable with this?
Yes.
Okay. The whole point of having this be a uniform system is to serve your needs, to have you have legally defensible and comprehensive policies, but also to make sure that you are comfortable with these as your governing documents, because that is what it's all about. These become your policies, and one of the most important things that a school board does is adopts policy to govern how the schools are operated and maintained, right? So you want to do a good job of this, you want to think about it, you want to be careful, but you also want to be comprehensive, okay? It's my pleasure to be here. If you don't have any other questions, I will excuse myself and let you conduct your board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So, Mr. President and members of the board, I do recommend that we move forward so that we can make sure to get our policies updated. And
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear motion?
Motion. I move.
Motion by Mr. Molina, second? Second by Ms. Murillo. Any other questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the board, next thing on the agenda is a follow-up on this as Superintendent Search. So, Ms. Riley?
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. President, members of the board, the last time that we were here, we had tabled the motion or the direction that we were going to go with the superintendent search. So I don't know if you need to review what was talked about last time. I did bring copies if you have your copies of what we presented last board, or if you need a copy. Does anybody need a copy?
Has one been provided to Mr.?
You might want to provide one for Mr. Molina.
So everybody
Got
has
one?
one?
Okay.
But I didn't know if you had your copy this time, so I just made copies. You guys are okay?
Yeah.
So I did want to share with you that at our last board meeting, it was January 24th, which was a Monday. On Thursday, which was the 27th, I did receive an email from Mr. Bash, which is the associate that's representing the company. And with your permission, I would like to read it to you. Dear Jacqueline, thank you for providing additional context regarding the board's deliberation. I viewed the entire 1/24/22 board discussion as well as the actions votes taken by the board and noted that our proposal was not approved. It was clear from board comments that the base fee and some speculations regarding costs beyond the base fee were the primary concern, with the number of the on-site days also mentioned as a concern. Based on the board decision at the 1/24/22 meeting, my understanding is that we are not selected to assist with your search, and the district has not yet decided how to proceed. I wish you the best with your next steps, and thank you for the time you spent communicating with me. So he understood it a different way than what was presented here, so I did email Mr. Bash. I let him know that we did not make a decision on it, but rather it was tabled. So we kind of left it at that. He did not return my email, but this morning he did call, and he said that he is going to tune in to today's meeting. If anybody has any questions, he's more than willing to answer those questions, just so that we don't have to be speculating or guessing on how the company operates, or any kind of question that we might have.
Yes?
Go ahead.
Okay, so Daniel, do we need to call him?
Daniel, so I did send him the link. Is he on there?
Yes. John Bash. Hello, Mr. Bash.
Hello, can you hear me?
Just barely.
Oh,
Okay,
let me get closer. Is that
sounds
better?
Much better, yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
We appreciate you being available to take any questions. I don't know if there's anything that you want to start off, Mr. Bash, by presenting, and then we can see if any of the board members have questions for you.
Certainly, and I want to thank the team at the school district and the board members tonight for the opportunity to share just a little bit and then respond to any questions that you have. First, I want to say that I'm a resident of Tucson, and I'm actually north of Tucson in a suburb called Oro Valley. And so part of what appealed to me when we saw your RFP come out was the physical proximity from my home to your district. And so that was the impetus for our proposal to begin with, because as I commiserated with your team today, it's about a 3-hour drive. And so for any on-site work, that's entirely doable. And so again, that was the genesis of the work. And I've done a little bit of homework on your district and what I could research online. And then I did follow, since we submitted our proposal at the end of November, board's discussion. And I appreciate that the board has struggled, as has your district leadership, around all the impacts that COVID has presented for you, which was the reason given for some of the delays with your decision making. Completely understandable. So with that in mind, I want to address first the question regarding on-site days. We do outline the days. There were 7 that we outlined in a typical search, and those days, absent a pandemic, are typically all in person, and we still are able to provide an in-person option if the board desired that. I also know, and I recall, that there were some questions regarding whether or not 7 days was sufficient to complete a thorough search. And so my answer to that is those are key milestones that we outline in the 7 days. My associate Lisa and I routinely work with whoever the board designates as our district contact to provide some additional time, usually in a remote model. And some examples of that would be, in a current search that I'm working on, we had a board member out in the community, and she ran into an assistant police chief. And that police chief asked if they could participate in a listening session, and we had already completed a few of those. And so they called us and said, will somebody call him and go through the series of questions? And we said, absolutely. And so that's one small example of something you don't see in the agreement, but we want to make sure we're thorough with engaging with whoever it is during the engagement phase you feel should be heard and should have input into your superintendent search process. So I wanted to allay any concern around charging the district for some occasional additional services like that we're used to providing. And I know my associate Lisa and I have routinely provided, additional help where we need. The other key thing around those 7 days is, while there's maybe a half day described, often we'll try and leverage the time that we are in the district to maximize the time that we're there. So if I go back to the engagement phase of our search process, if we schedule a series of listening sessions, for example, with different groups that you identify, they usually take around 45 minutes. And if we scheduled a series of those starting in the afternoon, it's not uncommon for us to start just after lunchtime and go well into the evening, so that we also accommodate people with daytime jobs and make sure that we include as many people as possible. Some boards also want us to do open public forums so that there aren't special invitations involved. Anybody who wants to come may come, and we work with the district to advertise as well as possible that opportunity. So that's another option in the model. What the proposal really doesn't outline in great detail is all the time we spend outside those 7 days recruiting, advertising, communicating with candidates, checking references, and doing a lot of due diligence around distilling down applicants for you that are truly qualified to do the work, and also don't have any significant red flags in their background that could become an embarrassment to the board. So we do a lot of vetting on behalf of the board, which is part of the service we provide. I know there were some geographic questions. That's why I led with where my home is, so that you know one of us is arguably local. My colleague Lisa Flores does live in Hawaii, and so her portion of the service would be remote. And she would also be assisting me in large part with the recruiting effort and candidate screening as we prepare a candidate slate for the board. Outside of that, our firm has significant experience in searches nationally. I also know there were some questions regarding, have we engaged in searches for smaller school districts like Cobre, and I personally have. In fact, most of my searches have been in districts that are either K-8 or smaller K-12. The most current search I'm involved with is in Washington State for a district that's a K-12 district, single high school, just shy of 3,000 students in a rural suburb north of Seattle. And so frankly, I prefer to work with smaller communities because they're more connected with their schools. The schools often function as a centering space for community activities and events, and I enjoy that. My background is largely on the instructional side, 34 years of experience as a teacher, athletic director, assistant principal. I've held district level leadership roles on the operations and the instructional side, and I have served as a superintendent. So we are confident in our qualifications to do this work for you, and it's my pleasure to answer any questions you might have if that would be helpful.
Mr. Bash, I'm just going to expand on a couple of things that we discussed today.
Sure.
So travel is included in the base 14.5, correct?
Yes, we
Okay.
reviewed the proposal today, and so my travel from Tucson is included in your base fee.
Okay, thank you.
I also, this is Ralph Sepulveda, I'm the president of the board right now. I have a couple of questions. First one is, are you working with any school district in the state of New Mexico right now? And also, just off the top of your head, what could be other charges that are not considered in the 14.5 right now?
Fair questions, and I am currently not engaged with any districts in New Mexico. Again, your proximity to where I'm at was one of the draws to submitting a proposal responding to your RFP. In terms of additional costs, we did outline in the proposal, and let me just go there for a second, because I think some of you have copies in front of you. Let's see. So in the cost proposal, it's described as Appendix D in the written proposal. There are optional services that we describe, and I emphasize optional because they're certainly not required. So let me speak to a couple of them. We recommend that as part of your engagement with your community to gather their input, that you administer a stakeholder survey. I have experience administering surveys using the Google Forms platform, and that is included in the fee. That said, HYA, the company that employs me, also provides a more comprehensive research-based survey, but they charge $2,000 for that, along with additional fees if you want to add custom questions and have that translated in language languages other than Spanish. So again, our recommendation, particularly for smaller districts, is utilize the Google Forms survey that I include in any search I do. And so there is no additional cost there for that. The additional associate days, again, I have not done a search yet where that was necessary. So what an additional cost is outlined, that only happens upon board approval, and there would have to be some exceptional circumstances for us to come to you and say we need more time. An optional service at the end of your search. So we narrow it down to 1 to 3 finalists or the finalists. HYA has a relationship with an independent due diligence service. It's a comprehensive background check for credit checks. They verify that the college degrees somebody claimed to have had, they actually earned. Those kinds of things. Just some boards want to engage in that, and that is a fee-based service that you pay directly to the company. They have a basic service at $1,100 and a more comprehensive service that includes credit checking and some other things for $1,950. I'm going to tell you roughly 30% of the boards I work with choose that option. The rest rely on us as search associates to do a thorough background and reference check on your behalf. Advertising, again, we work with your state organizations, typically your school boards association, your administrator associations, both principal and or central office. Most of them will have some vehicle for us to advertise. Very few of them charge a fee, but if they did charge a fee, that's where I would approach the district for some assistance that way. But generally, those are free in most states that we've worked in. HYA provides a national advertising package. So if you wanted to cast your net nationally and really search for candidates, we not only do Education Week, which is a national publication, and we have options for that. There are organizations that specialize in recruiting people of color and other specialized groups that we can connect you to, but there are fees for those kinds of additional national advertising. Finally, there's some transition services that we usually don't get into with the board until the end of the search, because the board may have their own plans for how they want to navigate the transition of a new superintendent joining your 5-member team. What we include in the base fee is a half-day planning discussion with the board and the candidate you select, and we discuss topics like 90-day transition plan or a listening tour. We hear the board out on what they believe are the most critical issues they would like the superintendent to begin learning about as they transition. Are there any major issues in the for example, are there any facility projects? Are there other things that require some immediate attention that we would want to put on a transition agenda? So we include that facilitation of a meeting as part of our base fee. There are expanded transition services and workshops we provide, and that's outlined in that cost proposal. So the vast majority of those extra things are optional. And I'm going to tell you that you can do a comprehensive search with none of those things. It really just depends on the board and what they determine they may want to access beyond what we already provide. Does that help?
Yes, Mr. Bash, that was one of my questions, was the reach of your search. And so basically it's a statewide search, but if the board chooses to go national search, then there may be additional fees with that, correct?
Well, if they want to do national advertising, that's extra, but HYA is a national firm. So the first step we would take if you select us to assist you is we do a preliminary announcement on the HYA website. Our website is considered one of the leaders nationally because we don't just post jobs that our firm is assisting with. We post jobs that our competing firms also are assisting with. And the reason our company does that is because it's become a draw for any candidate looking for a leadership opportunity in any part of the country. So there is a national component that's included, and that's it. And then occasionally I can convince my supervisors at HYA to include Cobre in one of the national group advertising pieces that they do at Ed Week, because I don't think it costs extra to add a school district name. But they usually will do that right at the beginning of a search, so that we get your district name out there and get that national exposure.
And Mr. Bash, also, what's a typical timeline?
Great question. So as you know, we submitted at the end of November, so you saw a December kickoff. I'm going to tell you at this point, you would be clearly in the back half of a typical superintendent search season. And so an ambitious timeline would be by the end of April or mid-May, making a selection decision. So if we backward plan from, let's say, mid-May, and I assume you have a spring break scheduled somewhere in there as a school district, that's part of my thinking around a mid-May. You're still, before the school year ends, and it still gives us time to do some recruiting and fully vet candidates. Typically, you want the position posted for 4 to 6 weeks, no less than 4 weeks, so that gives us time to get out there and really recruit for you. And then screening after the application deadline closes usually takes around a week, week and a half. The school board then selects a slate of candidates to interview on a first round. And that usually takes a week, because we also need to give candidates time to plan their schedules, particularly those that you select out of a first round to advance as finalists. And so once we're into that process, usually within a 3-week window, we can complete interviews, final reference checks, and help the board narrow it down to their top candidate.
So we could feasibly have one here by the beginning of school year, July 1.
That would be what we would advertise. We'd map out a timeline with the board. Our very first step, if you select us, is a planning meeting with the board. A lot of that is calendar driven. And so, yes, it's common for us to put a calendar together that, in this case, might indicate a decision no later than mid-May with a July 1 starting date. The other question we would ask the board is, are you open, if the candidate was available, for them to start a bit early and transition with current leadership in the district for the smoothest, possible transition. That's commonly done if it works for the candidate you select.
Any other questions?
Mr. Bash, thank you so much for being available to answer questions and provide some additional information to the board. It was much appreciated.
Certainly. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So with some of those questions being answered, I just want to reiterate what your 3 options are. And I know we discussed them at the last board. So I just wanted to remind you that we can run the whole RFP process again. And then just a reminder that we do run the risk of his company not coming on board with an RFP or submitting anything. Our second option, the district can offer a contract to HYA and Associates, and that would be Mr. Bash. Or the third option would be that the Cobre Board of Education can act on their own behalf, and they can conduct the superintendent search without the use of any consulting services.
Any comments on that?
Mr. President, my only comment would be that we've been at this for probably about 9 months now, so, it's been a while.
And I'd like to add that, like he said, we're on the later end of people looking for superintendents, and I think with us having to review policies and hopefully creating a strategic plan, I just don't think the board has the time, the knowledge, or the resources to do the search on our own.
And I'd like to comment that a professional corporation doing this is a plus. It's a very big plus. This is the most important decision that we make. And I would like to have the resources that Mr. Bash is availing to us be put to use.
Well, and also, board members, you know, he did say we're on the back end, but we're on the back end for this school year, but we would technically be on the front end for the following school year, which is actually a plus, if that's how it worked out.
Yeah, and it's my understanding, the last I checked, there's 32 superintendent vacancies in the state of New Mexico right now. So, where do we go?
Are you entertaining motion?
Yeah,
I would move that we go with item 2, selection 2, which would be to offer a contract to HYA for providing services for the search for the superintendent.
there's a recommendation by Mr. Guadiana. Second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Murillo. Any other discussion, questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
One opposed. Motion carries.
So I will contact Mr. Bash and his associates and let him know that we are in favor of awarding him the contract. Okay?
Okay, and thank you. At the same time, Jackie, ask him, we might have to have a special meeting with him to set up contract signing and things like that. And I don't know what else they've got.
Okay.
Well, on his proposal, it does say that he has a board planning meeting, which is usually a half day, usually an evening board meeting, so that would probably have to be a special work session.
Yeah. So then we also need to see the when he's available and when, by the time that we have to post, that we'll be having a meeting.
So since Mr. Bash is on, do we want to have him answer any additional questions at this time? Mr. Bash?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, so we may have some additional questions. Jackie, go ahead.
So, Mr. Bash, thank you so much for staying on the line. We do have some questions. As far as the contract, the motion did carry to award your company the contract. Congratulations.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. When would we meet, or how would you like to proceed, or when would be the first time that you could meet with the board, start the process?
Well, I guess the question I would have is, in the board meeting schedule, is it customary for this board to have any room on the existing board agendas to schedule, for example, a 2-hour session? Typically, the answer to that is no. And so often what we see boards do is say, well, is everybody available to come 2 hours earlier or later, stay later, for an evening that they've already blocked out on the calendar? Option 2 is we schedule a special meeting of the board for this single topic. And then what we do is plan an agenda together, and we have a sample agenda that we can work with. An early decision for the board would need to be who will be the school board liaison for us that we can reach out to. Typically, it's the president of the board, unless a board member has some experience with searches in the past, and the board wants to designate that person if they're not the president. Entirely up to the board. But I usually, once I have that designated board member, I reach out to them directly to discuss different topics that we usually cover and collaborate that way. And so my availability looks pretty good starting next week. And so again, I don't know if there are days of the week that the board normally targets to gather, or are there days of the week they try to avoid, that kind of thing.
So with that, board members, in looking at our calendars, February 23rd, we are booked already from 5 to 6:30 for a work session, and also March 7th from 5 to 6:30. So just work around those.
And our next regular board meeting is,
Our next regular board meeting is February 28th. Yeah, but it'd be a work session, so it really wouldn't be, right. Since it's a work session, we're just discussing, Ms. Murillo suggested on Monday, the 21st, I did say that that is a holiday for Cobre. Doesn't mean we can't meet on that date. Because it's a work session, we wouldn't look at it being televised by our technology department. They would be off that day, so.
and that gives us time to advertise the legal notice.
If we get it out tomorrow, yeah, well, let's see, there's a newspaper on Wednesday, so we would be able to get it in Wednesday's newspaper, so it would make enough time. No, yeah, because there's no newspaper on Thursday.
Right, no.
Right.
I'm available that day.
The 21st. Everybody okay with
Are
it?
you available, Mr. Bash, on January 21st?
February.
February, I'm sorry.
February? Yeah, that's President's Day,
Yes, sir.
and you're looking at an evening window?
Probably, yes.
5 o'clock?
About 5 o'clock.
Okay? Yes.
Mr. Bash, though, would you be in person or would you be virtual? Our technology department won't be available, but,
Yeah, so if it was at 5 o'clock, I can drive out. Yeah, I could be there.
okay.
Okay, so it'll be the 21st,
Yes.
February 21st at 5 o'clock in the evening at the administration office, Joyce, or?
Because it's just you all, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So, yeah, we could do it at the admin office. And Mr. Bash, Ms. Riley will get with you with the address.
Okay?
And then Ms. Riley will also get with you in reference to contract and PO and all of that stuff.
Okay. Sounds great.
We will be in contact then, Mr. Bash. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, and we pledge to do the best we can to find you some really good candidates to choose from. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you,
too.
you too.
Thank you.
So Monday, February 21st at 5 o'clock at the administration office, and I will get together with him, get the specifics, and have everything ready for you as far as contracts and the contract for him, so he can sign at that time as well.
Okay,
Is there anything else that you need?
okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riley.
Moves us to item F, Finance. Terry.
Item F, Finance, Ms. Holguin.
Ms. Holguin, before you begin, can I ask a question, Mr. President? Out of the 8 items you have, I'm aware that maybe only one went through the Finance Committee. And so I'm wondering if, which ones have deadlines that need to be approved tonight? And if they don't have an immediate deadline, if we can have it go through the finance committees before they're presented? I understand our policy on the finance committee, number 122. Right, it says the finance committee serves as an external monitoring committee on budget and other financial matters. And I think for the spirit of transparency, it would be nice if we could have that go through the finance committee before they're presented to us. But I understand if there's any of these that have immediate deadlines that can't wait the 2 weeks. So that's my question to you.
Okay, so the deadlines are ordinarily on the award letter. So the first one that was submitted was, the action item was left off of last board meeting. So this one actually has gone through all the steps except for the voting of the approval. So that's for the SB 9 local match that was for fund balances that were left over in the PED site that shows that we still have a balance of 56,758, and that one was presented for cafeteria equipment. So if we can get that approved as soon as possible, because I know the equipment needs to get here and purchased as soon as possible, because we're looking at equipment that is substandard in the area of food service.
Ms. Holguin, on the second one, the family income index, we only have until June to spend the money, so I would recommend not waiting on that one.
The family income index is actually a maintenance bar that's just going from shifting the money from line items that were originally set to new line items that the principal has identified as extremely necessary to her programs. And being that we are in a situation right now where we need to get those moving forward, I would recommend that one be approved as well.
And for item C, I mean, we've presented to the board already on the air quality. Jaime Treviso has already come and presented. This award just came up. It needs to be spent by February 22nd.
That one would be on the award letter that shows the air quality, because in fact we got an email today that said that if we weren't planning on spending the air quality awards, that they'd prefer that we let them know so they could revert the funds. So that is how quick they want things to be moving along for the air quality awards. So that one is for Fund 24316, the bar for 24316, that's budgeted only for supply assets, which is the equipment to purchase for the air quality.
And this is the one where he came over and did that presentation for us, right?
Yes, that was the first phase, actually phase 2 of the air quality, and this particular bar is for phase 3. So it's the same as phase 1 and 2 for air quality. This one is number 3. So this one is, we're hoping that this one can be moved along as well.
Okay, was phase 1 and phase 2 presented to the finance committee? Okay.
And then on item D, CLSD, I know they did want that one already submitted, so I would recommend not waiting on that one.
So going back,
item D, and we'll go back and review them and go over them in detail. Right now, we're just trying to answer Ms. Murillo's question about waiting on them.
So on the air quality one, Ms. Varela, it says submitted with assurances through OBMS by February 28th. So the air quality, the first one and the second one's already went through finance. It's an additional award on the same fund number. So that's what we're presenting here. And then, I'm sorry, Ms. Varela, go ahead and move on
That's
to.
okay. And just to let the board know that This really is the time of year when we start getting carryover letters from the state, and we don't typically have a long turnaround time. It's usually really fast.
Actually, the CLSD was supposed to be in by January 31st, but we asked for an extension because I was out. So CLSD is one that we need to get into the system as soon as possible, because we're going to lose that ability to spend that money, and it's $214,000 on that bar.
And then same thing, you know, with the next gen carryover, extended learning time, we have been paying for transportation out of operational, so the sooner that we can get that funding so that we can start moving our transportation and paying out of that would be really beneficial to us.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. And I do understand sometimes things come in and go really quickly. Ms. Holguin, do you feel like there's anything that can wait, or do you feel everything on here is urgent?
I think that,
Okay.
that because of the lag time, because I was out, the lag time was because of that, and I think we're catching them up. That's why we have so many bars on one board meeting rather than when we received them and go through the finance. But if we get any award letters, you know, from here until the time we meet, of course, we'll submit them to the finance meeting, you know.
Okay, and
committee
is that what
before.
typically happens, is the bar goes, budget adjustments go through the finance
Yes.
committee? Okay.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Thank you for answering my questions. I'm new, I'm learning, so
Yeah,
I
no
appreciate
problem.
it.
But I'd like to also bring up a concern as we're going through this. The way we get the information is very anecdotal to understand the impact on the entire program, especially the CARES. I was looking up and was referred to look up the expenditures that we make in the CARES, and specifically I think it was the CARES 1. I looked at the neighboring school districts, and there's a category for expenditures which is for principals and district leaders. The percentage that we spent on I think it was $300,000, was 40% on that particular line item, and that's opposed to supplies for COVID, the adaptations there has to be for different compliance.
Yeah.
But the neighboring school districts, Silver and I think it was Silver and Lordsburg have zero expenditures in that category. The highest one is, I believe, Hatch, that has 8% of its money going to principals and leadership, and also Deming had 3%, I believe. I'm not exactly sure on the school districts, but I am sure on the percentages. And that's something that I think we should take a look at to make sure that the money's going where it needs to go. And that's not what I remember in terms of what's been presented and what's been accepted. So it's a question of, is this data incorrect? And maybe there's some explanation that can get us through that. But I'd like to really see it more as an agenda item, to look at it in the whole context rather than the piecemeal of the bars, to make sure that we're doing what we had originally agreed to.
I think that the PED will accept no bar adjustments if the application, if it does not tie to the items on the original application. If the application has to be adjusted, then we would certainly bring that. That's a type like the family income index that we have in here as a maintenance bar that shows that we're not just moving the money, but that we're making sure that the budget ties to the application and continues to tie to the application expenditures.
I understand that. It's just that my recollection of the approval wasn't that there was that significant an amount for administration. And so if there's some categorization that inflates that more than otherwise,
Yeah, I'm not too sure on the, because the way that application states their categories is different from when we have to translate it to the actual line items. And so, you know, when we translate from the application to the finance side, I wouldn't be looking at whether, I know it has to tie to the category, but it also has to tie to an available and allowable line item on the bar. So we try to coordinate that, because there's no way a bar is gonna be approved as submitted if it does not tie to the categories on the application. But I wouldn't be able to recall or tell you whether or not CARES 1 or CARES 2 or CARES 3 is allotted for this amount, not without actual, you know, us bringing forth the application and the budgets that go with those particular areas.
Yeah,
And I
So-
know that right now, in our discussions today, we do have plans to bring back, we had made some revisions to CARES 1 at the last meeting, I believe it was, or the meeting before that. But because of this new air quality, we have to make some additional revisions to that. So we are bringing that revision back next week, but we needed the air quality approved before we can make the other revisions to CARES 1.
I'd be happy to send you a link that shows the data.
Well, Ms. Varela's been attending the workshops, because they've been giving periodic workshops that show how and to make sure and ensure that we are following all the CARES orders that say so much is supposed to be expended on certain activities or categories. And so there's multiple workshops. We're on like workshop number, I don't even know which one, where it shows, where it ties the finance and the application and so forth. If you'll excuse me, I gotta get my water.
So as Ms. Holguin is getting her water, Terry, I have some in the bag if you need some. Okay. If we want to start going through them, so on bar A, that's actually the one, the SB9 matching fund, again, that's the one that was presented in detail at the last board meeting in reference to the cafeteria. I inadvertently had left off the pound sign, so we weren't able to move on that.
So your recommendation?
So I do recommend approval of the SB9 matching funds as presented at the last board meeting. And again, it was all for equipment in the cafeterias.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Molina. Any questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Item B.
Item B is the air quality award, as we just.
Item B is family income index.
Oh, sorry, went too far.
So if you'll remember on the family income index, this is the grant that was awarded only to Bayard Elementary. And so when we brought it the first time, we did have it as dedicated towards interventionists. And we knew at the time that we may not be able to fill those positions and that we'd have to come back. So we did do thorough advertising. We have now been able to pick up one part-time interventionist. We do have a staff member that's going to be coming back. And so that's why we're revising. This one is because we weren't able to fill it the way that we wanted originally.
Okay, so the 80,000 is in additional compensation for a teacher that's coming back on a part-time basis.
But not just for that, Ms. Holguin. So if you look at the
narrative.
narrative behind that,
It also includes additional compensation for after-school tutoring and enrichment. It includes additional compensation for staff attending family literacy nights in the evenings. And it also includes additional compensation for staff attending trainings and additional compensation for 2 teachers who serve as lead MLSS team members at Bayard Elementary.
So on the narrative also, it includes what would be the other services. The other services is the SEL assembly, which that one is they're bringing somebody in to provide the services to put the assembly together, correct? And then, so that's the contracted services of $1,900, and then the student travel is for cultural events, field trips for cultural events is $4,000. And then, like she indicated, which ones are the additional compensation. And then also, the software is the computer program licenses for spelling. And then the general supplies and materials is the other classroom materials that are included here, the decodable readers, materials for reading and math.
Terrific kid luncheons. Also, publishing of student books for a literacy project.
Right. So all the other categories that are listed on the narrative that fall into general supplies and materials totals up to $13,526.
So all the ones that are now receiving the money moved towards show a present budget of 0.
So what this is this is a maintenance bar, so it's transferring within the actual grant from the line items up on top where it shows
Yes,
the present
yes.
budget. So your subtotal is gonna equal 0 because your bar, all you're doing is transferring from categories to categories. You're not actually increasing any funding.
I understand, but the present budget part of that is the part that I don't understand why that's not there.
The present budget are the top 4 numbers.
No. On the following 4, is it 5? 5 line items, there's nothing there as a present
Right,
budget.
because
Because there
if you-
wasn't
if-
anything budgeted in
Right.
those line items. We are moving them from what's present now to the adjusted budget. So now it's the adjusted budget amount that has the money in it, not the present budget.
The original budget, in the original budget, it was for 1 teacher interventionist and 2 EA teacher interventionists.
No, I understand that part, but these line items that we're now moving the money towards, were they completely unfunded prior?
At the time, yes. Yeah, that's why it shows nothing. This is actually what PED has. When you go into the PED system, it has what was in the present budget. It allows the adjustment out, and then it says an adjustment in, and this is your new adjusted budget. So there was nothing in the line items that we're putting money in now.
Okay.
So if you look at the first 4 under present budget, that's where, the money was, and now we're moving it to all the items under the adjusted amount column.
Okay, any other question? Recommendation?
So I recommend approval of the maintenance bar for family income index as presented by Ms. Hoagie.
You heard the recommendation, do I hear a motion?
I make a motion.
Motion by Ms. Murillo, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Molina. Any other questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
So item C is the increase bar for the air quality. So this is the third phase. That's why it's listed as air quality 3, but they're using the same funding code 24316 that was for, also for phase 2. So it's, so that's why it has a present budget of 17,820, which was the phase 2 amount. The adjusted amount is 17,743 for a total budget in this funding of $35,563.
And the present budget was already approved by the board previously. So I recommend approval of the additional adjusted amount of $17,743.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, second. Second.
I'll say.
Second. Second by Mr. Guadiana. Any other questions?
Just to clarify, the air quality, this is the one that Jaime Treviso presented on, I think it was at the last board meeting.
Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Item D is the increased bar for the CLSD, and this is what's carrying over and what's being allotted for carryover from the last year's grant. So this is actually what was left to carry over from the 2021 allocation, which is $214,154.
So what we're looking at with professional development is some additional readers, writers, workshops training. We also did purchase Reading Horizons, and so we'd be able to do some additional training here to include our special ed staff. Other contracted services would be with the readers, writers as well with Yvonne Shea. And we also did contract with the lady out of Hondo to support the high school with some additional coaching on readers, writers. General supplies and materials, we want to purchase some additional Reading Horizons materials, which is structured literacy for K1, 2, and 3 for our special education teachers at all the elementary schools, and some additional readers, writers, workshop materials as needed by the schools. And then with the support services, what we want to do here is move part of my salary, Ms. Davis's salary, and Susie Marin's salary out of the original CLSD so that we can free up some money on the CLSD to be able to provide. We're not getting any additional money, it's just shifting part of our salary from there to here, so that this year we're hopefully going to be able to give bigger stipends to our teachers, additional compensation who are doing the letters training. Letters training has been a training that is over a period of time, and last year we were able to give teachers $400 in additional compensation for 2 units that they did, but because we had some additional money this year, we're looking at hoping to give them $1,000 each, because they are putting a lot of their own time into the training.
I have some questions. How long will the Circle grant last? When does the Circle grant? This is the Circle grant, right?
No, this is
So
CLSD.
this is CLSD. So
Comprehensive.
Circle grant already ended, but we did get a 1-year extension. So what we're doing with the Circle grant this year is we're paying all our coaches and all our interventionists the additional compensation for ELTP and K5+. So we did have the opportunity to write an additional grant for the money that was left. So that's Circle. So this year Circle ends. So CLSD, after this year, we have 2 more years.
And I do appreciate that the teachers, you want to compensate them for the letters training and all the training they're going through. I would like some feedback on how the teachers, I know years ago when we did professional development, we would do an evaluation at the end of the training. If we could get some feedback, because I do know Readers Writers has really come under fire the past few years because it's not a science-based reading program. And so I would like some feedback from the teachers on how they feel about the professional development.
So if I can answer that, we are in the process of already creating a survey. The coaches, myself, and our consultant, we are already working on it. And I know that it's come under fire, which is why. Which is why we've purchased the Reading Horizons, which is the structured literacy program for kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. And we've already started having conversations about how we may restructure our professional development next year to really look at more of the foundational skills for K-1-2, especially for the first semester. So we're already having conversations of how we're going to make that look a little bit different next year to support our students more fully.
I have a question regarding the shifting the salary from where it currently is to here and putting that out. I appreciate that, but how does that get backfilled then in your original salary?
How does it what?
Get backfilled, or is it actually a reduction?
No, it'd be the same amount. So the same amount on the grant, the same amount for the three of us. It's just shifting it over here because we did put letter stipends in the other grant, in the original grant. And so that's why if we free up some money there, we can go ahead and just use that money for those letter stipends, for the additional compensation. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No. This is a percentage of your salary, and that you're shifting over to, so it can be given out in that stipend.
So it's a percentage of my stipend, a percentage of Ms. Davis's stipend through CLSD because we're funded through multiple sources. With Ms. Marin, she's only funded under CLSD. So again, our percentages are not changing as far as what percentage of our salary is coming out of CLSD. That's staying the same. We're just shifting it from this year's budget to the carryover budget. Because
Which is actually last year's funding. So we're pulling in from last year's funding to help us cover what we need to cover so that we do have the money to do the stipends.
Okay. So that's new money then? Well,
It's
unanticipated money.
It's old money that
Yeah.
we carried over. So, that we didn't have access to yet because it takes the PED some time to calculate because the federal year ends different than the state year. So when they calculate their carryovers, it's as of September 30th so that they can adjust their books on October 1. Ordinarily, and in a best case scenario, we'd have carryovers, by November, December, but that doesn't happen. That doesn't always happen. So these letters are dated in January, which is much better than what they've done in the past because sometimes carryover letters don't come till May or June. So we're making progress.
So I do recommend approval of the CLSD carryover increase bar as presented.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Guadiana, second.
Second, Molina.
Second by Mr. Molina. Any other questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item E.
So item E is a bar for, again, an SB 9 match, but this is the current year allocation based on, and the reason this would have been delayed is because they hadn't set our SB 9 local yet. So it went to show, that we had a match yet until now. This one is the 31700 that was the first bar was actually the old fund number that they used to use for the match. Now they're going forward, And that's why they're calculating that we have 56 as a balance in 31700. And now they're going forward and awarding the new state match at 31703 for $37,405. And that one we budgeted as maintenance and repair of buildings, grounds, and equipment at $11,405 because SB9 is generally for maintenance costs are the most allowable. We did budget in software and supply assets, which is line 2 and 4, for a fingerprinting system that's going to help us be able to process applicants a lot sooner and a lot more reasonably priced for the applicant and for the district to get their licensure and get processed that much quicker. Because right now it's costing a lot for even substitutes to get their substitute licenses, the coaching licenses. Everything requires the processing of the fingerprints for the background checks. And so Ms. Varela can elaborate if you have questions on the fingerprint.
So we will no
system.
longer have to, once we get the machine, we would no longer have to send them to the Silver City Police Department to make appointments. Ms. Davis would be able to just fingerprint them there in our office and get them processed.
They'll still have to go to the licensure from there, which means that information would go first to the licensure bureau, not the district, but it would save the step and the money for both the district and the applicant, and make it, that much more quick turnaround to be able to get, the licensure so they can get hired.
So the fingerprint system is still the same when you log on, it's just a matter of getting the
Yeah.
prints. And
Yeah.
Silver City PD charges us for those prints?
Yes,
What's the average? I don't,
$45.
really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And we found that with the state coding, that the cost can be as low as $8 and so much.
Thank
So that's what the applicants are paying right now, is $45.
The other thing that we have on here also is where it has the vehicles general. We do need another vehicle in our maintenance department specifically for the specialty areas of HVAC, plumbing, electrical. So I don't know, Mr. Bidu, if there's anything else you want to add on that one? No, we said the other thing we budgeted here is an additional vehicle for maintenance, specifically in the specialty areas with the HVAC, the plumbing, the electrical.
To be in the mic.
Part of the also was written into where that would be like a hybrid vehicle. So it would not be just a gas vehicle. We're looking at a hybrid in that process. It's going to be one of the little Mavericks, and it would be able to handle, so we wouldn't have the cost of the fuel as much either.
So I recommend approval of the bar for the capital improvement state match as presented by Ms. Hoagie.
You heard the recommendation, do I hear a motion?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Guadiana. Any other questions?
Yes, is this being a SB9 funding source, are we keeping track and putting that on the web in terms of how we're spending the money that we were so fortunate to get?
So Ms. Riley is working on a spreadsheet for both the SB9 and
The bond.
the bond. Mhm.
Primarily the bond. The SB9 is, because now we have the 3 funding sources, we do need to break it down and we need to start looking at that. As of yet, we're still, and Mr. Peru will report on that in a little bit, that we're working through the facilities master plan to make sure that the expenditures that we anticipate and can budget in the local SB9 are part of the master plan. So,
But to answer the question about like these that are going on forward now, are we going to put that on the web in terms of the expenses we're making as we go along rather than waiting till
So
later
that,
on and then writing
Mr.
off?
Guadiana, that is a request that I have made of the finance department.
Okay.
so yes.
Any other questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
So the next bar is item F, and it's also carryover from last year for the Next Gen Career Technical Education Program. As you know, we received funding last year to fund the vocational at the high school. The carryover is $5,691, and it's being budgeted both in supplies and materials and supply assets. Anything that is considered consumable is general supplies and materials. Anything that's considered equipment is under supply assets, 5,000 and over. And just so you know, from the other bar, fixed assets is anything over 5,000. So the way we're budgeting supplies and materials, 2191, and then for equipment, so according to the technical program at the high school, part of this is to fund equipment for the wood burner and the wood shop, welding jackets. The auto shop just received the lift that was ordered with the prior year money. And so if there's any additional costs that, to make sure that that's working, that's where the additional funding will be allocated to.
For welding, it was also to include gloves, and then for the broadcasting class, looking at a poster machine. I recommend approval as presented by Ms. Holguin.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Murillo. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Molina. Any other questions?
Again, maybe I just have a problem with the form, but the present budget again is zero. And so if I were to look at the budget now and I look at these two line numbers that we budgeted no money for this, not to say the new money, I'm just saying that the money that would normally be in our budget, because it would give us context of whether that money was really deficient and this is a good thing, or if it was already substantial, to wonder why it isn't being spent somewhere else. And I know in both of these, in this case, there's very little that goes into these programs, and I appreciate that it's going there. But I'm concerned that there was nothing in there in the budget to begin with.
This is carryover from what my understanding, and I would have to go back and look at what PED has, but the 27502, anytime you have a 27 in the front of your funding code, that is a state grant, and state grants generally have to be expended in full by June 30th. So this actually, if you look at here, it's New Mexico State Appropriation Redistribution. So they actually had unexpended funds at the state level that they decided that they were going to redistribute to the schools. So no, we don't have a current budget for this fund. That was last year's fund. So the redistribution happened from the state level to fund us this little tiny bit that we can use for what the high school has determined is still deficient. So no, it isn't a lot, and it was that grant was expended by us last year. And so honestly, if you spend all your money, this is when you get a redistribution, because if you don't spend the money, that's when it goes back into the pool, and they generally give it to the schools that didn't that actually spent the money and were able to make good use of the money. So actually, we did expend our portion of the fund last year in its entirety. So there wouldn't have been a present budget in this fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, item G is, as Ms. Varela stated, is extended learning time program transportation. So the PED took what the average of what we expended to the transportation contractors for the 10 extra days, and also to date for what we've got anticipated for after-school transportation. So they awarded $48,752 to help us cover the extended learning time transportation.
And this is for all 6 schools. So I recommend approval of the extended learning transportation budget as presented.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Murillo. Any other questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
So item H is when the PED looks at our 40-day numbers, then in February, they do the calculation to see whether or not we had an increase or decrease in membership. Also, at this point, they also look at whether they're going to increase the unit value. So if you look at the award letter, the unit value went from 47.7 to 48.63. They don't actually give us the actual amount that I have put here, 103,230. But the way the calculation is if you look at what they show on the table, is Cobre School's new SCG amount. That would be on the back of the second page of the tables. So it says Cobre Schools, their budget, our budget is up to, and this is not our full operational budget because we've got other, like the taxes and everything figured in there. But the SCG that they're allowing us and funding us for is $13,329,461.48. And the way they get that calculation, so I have 2 information sheets. One is the state equalization guarantee tool that I put in your packets, and it's kind of what has tiny little numbers on here. So if you look at that SCG tool, you look on page 3 of that in the dark blue at the bottom, it has the 13,329,461. Now, all they do is they get our units, our SCG grand total units of 2689.711 times the new unit value of 4863 gives 13,080,064.59. Then they bring it down and they get, this year, as you remember on House Bill 2, they had a hold harmless provision for the districts, and the hold harmless on the base units is 151,001, and the ELTP hold harmless for extended learning is 98,395. So they give us this, but where did we start from and where are we now? And that's where I provided you the this Excel spreadsheet that shows where we were 2021 SCG from the 910B5 with the decrease that came from the K5 pilot. So if you recall, when we budgeted last year, we budgeted K5 plus funding in SCG. Then they awarded us the pilot program, which became a grant. So they decreased, and you guys approved the decrease as it was a shift from this money from SCG into the grant program, which is considered K5 pilot. Okay, so when we were last at the SCG funding, if you look on the last line, we were at 13,226,231.63. Okay, and that was decreasing by the K5 amount. So that zeroed that out, and it gave us the 13,226,000, which balances with what PED had as our current before they used this tool here to get our new budget. Okay, so if you take those and you assess the new unit value to all our membership as of the 40th day, which is columns, the last 5 columns on the spreadsheet, it'll tell you that in regular ed units, we went from 6,062,800 to 6,180,098. And down, all the way down for the different units, which is special ed, bilingual, elementary, at risk, miscellaneous units like the small size adjustment, the PE, elementary PE, and then the hold harmless provision. So the only place that we didn't have an increase in the whole thing was in the hold harmless. And I want to point that out because this year in the legislative session, they have not discussed giving the districts any more hold harmless provisions for loss of enrollment during COVID. So I want this to be kind of fresh, so when we start our budget prep, we start our budget prep with this planning unit value, and then whatever the state decides that our 80-120 calculations produce as far as revenue, okay? So we'll be coming back to you in the next month saying, now this is our revenue projection, okay? Once the legislative session goes through and they decide how much funding they're gonna fund, then we come back to you. First, we go to the finance committee. Obviously, we start the budget, planning there, and then we come back to you and we inform you, this is the revenue that we're starting with, and this is how we have to build our budget. Okay, so this is what I wanted to present now, especially with new members on the board, to start getting that conversation going. So bottom line, when you take what they had approved after our K5 plus adjustment to the current adjustment that they made of 13,329,000, so that's where I get the 103 to 2985. Which is what the bar is for. The bar is for $103,230. Okay, so when we look at the bar for that, we don't have very much that we can allocate to the 103. What we've looked at is that at Snell Middle School, we're still, we currently have a sub in the vocational area, which is the family and consumer science, basic design and crafts, and personal development, which is pretty much, family and consumer science used to be what home ec is, those units. So right now we have a substitute teacher. The reason we're budgeting 0.5 is that the teacher that retired there was currently budgeted under CARES. So we can safely budget the half if we can get a teacher in there before the end of the year. If not, it'll help us fund the substitute that's currently there. Okay, so that's the $43,230. The other line that we put money in from the 103,000 is under legal. Currently, the present budget was budgeted at $20,000. Our current expenditures right now for legal are $67,000. That's where we are current. We also have 14,000 already encumbered to the next bills. So we would be right around $80,000 to fund all our legal costs right now. So that's what we're asking, that the budget increase be for, so that we can fund that line that's in the negative.
I have a quick question, Ms. Holguin. Where is the legal line?
On the bar, on the first page of what I'm talking about.
There's no program.
Okay, and so when we had a budget of 20,000
Yes.
for legal, and it went up 60,000,
Well, that's what we're asking for it to go up.
so to
Now?
be 80,000? And that's a significant increase. Could you tell us why that's needed?
Well, to date, we already have legal fees of $67,000 paid.
And is that provided to the finance committee, like
Every
which
ti-
lawyer, and
Every
is it
time we-
disclosed why the lawyer was consulted?
Every time we do a review of bills, it includes the cost of what was billed during that month. The specifics of whatever the legal issues are not necessarily privy at that point, but they are discussed in closed session if that's necessary. Because it could be anything from IPRA requests that have to be reviewed by the lawyer. It could be employee issues that have to be dealt with lawyers. It could be student discipline. It could be, we also had, due process for students.
And how often for the information, the IPRA, information of public records, how often do we have to send that to the lawyer rather than provide the information to the public?
It depends what the documents contain, because they have to redact any information that has to do with personnel or anything that is not allowable under an IPRA request. And so those are the things that are handled on the legal side of it, to make sure that we are not providing information that is not allowable. Personnel records have to be, there's certain information in personnel that has to be redacted by the lawyer before that information can be provided to the person that is requesting it.
And I also just wanted to emphasize that it does go through the finance committee, but it is also approved by the full board during review of bills.
During review of bills. So
But not
anything that's
necessarily exactly what it was for. That more so goes through the finance committee.
And is 80,000 a usual amount that we pay for legal fees?
No, absolutely not. The current budget that we have at $20,000 is actually slightly inflated from all the, I went back 7 years and it has never reached the 20.
So is there, maybe you can't tell me here, but what has happened that this year it's skyrocketed?
Yeah, that's what I can't tell you
Okay.
here, because you guys have to discuss it in closed session for specifics with Ms. Varela. Because Ms. Varela, like, I can't call the attorney. There's only certain calls that can be made to the attorney, so I wouldn't be able to tell you specifics on every aspect of what was billed.
I have a question in terms of the mechanics of the payment. Certainly when we see it on the list of bills, many times it's already spent, but the other part is that there's really no context in terms of whether that's within or exceeding the budget. And that should be noted. And I don't understand how we can exceed a budget by $60,000 without the board approving that.
The legal fees are basically on retainer, so what happens is it's very out of the ordinary type of expenditure where you would have to have the money in the line item. Those are expenditures that occur and have to be paid for. Yes, they should be on a bar, on a transfer bar or a maintenance bar, but currently we haven't made any transfers. That's why we're bringing it here, so that we're saying that we're actually in that particular line item we're in the deficit because.
Okay. But my question was that the expenditure happens beyond what's budgeted. Doesn't come to the board before it's increased so that there can be more expenditure. We get it after the fact that there is the
Well,
expense.
that's why we were changing the review of the bills, but we're finding that in the process of how it gets reviewed in finance, how it gets reviewed here, we have the potential to be pretty late on a bill. So we really have to define and figure out exactly how we're gonna do that so that we not only pay the bills on time, but inform you that this is something that is definitely an issue.
So I recommend approval of the SAG final unit value bar as presented by Ms. Hooking.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, second? Second?
So I'm a new board member, and so, this budget stuff is really, there's a lot of budget stuff, but it's kind of hard. I do see, how come we couldn't budget that amount of legal fees? I understand that it's unprecedented because of the amount of, IMPRAs and stuff like that, but moving forward, are we, is this going to become a typical expenditure amount? I mean, is that amount going to become versus, is it going to become pretty common to spend $80,000
We hope not.
on legal fees?
But when we start building the budget and we go into discussions on the finance team, that's something that we definitely have to look at and figure out how much we do need to budget for that line item. Because like I said, I went back like 7-8 years and it hasn't been this high.
So I guess kind of the reason this is like it is that is we're incurring services and then we're looking at the bills is what it is, because you're saying about it being late, right? So we're incurring services, we're getting charged, and then later on the finance committee is having to approve the bill that's already been charged, I guess is what it is, right?
Yeah, pretty much,
Okay. And so we're going to try to streamline those processes. They'll make it easier, because I kind of see the point of some of the board members that we're paying bills when they've already been, or we're approving paying bills when bills have already been incurred. So.
Absolutely, and we had this discussion before, in a few meetings before, is when we tried to change the process that says, we really need to make sure that you're seeing the expenditure before it becomes an expenditure, because once we pay it, that's when it becomes an expenditure. It's an encumbrance first, then we get the invoice. Currently what we're doing now is we're looking at before, we pay the bill and we make sure that we do a pre-voucher posting and make sure that everything is in line with the grants. We actually have this year 10 new grants, in specific lines that from CARES to SEL to air quality and homeless and all of those different grants, that we need to make sure that we're hitting the correct lines before that we're, actually cutting the checks. And so there is the push for more editing and more review before the bills get paid. But is that, does that get us to the 30 days net that we have to pay a vendor, And if we're doing that and then going to, and we miss, the finance part of the board meeting or whatever it is, how do we do it? So we really need to put our heads together and decide how the best process is for reviewing the expenditures prior to paying them.
Okay, understood. And then so, in regards to this bar, is there something exigent that would require us to, we should do it today, or is it something that maybe we can table and review? I mean, I just don't, I'm just, being a new board member, I don't feel comfortable voting on it when I'm not, especially with us, I know that there's some stuff that can't be said in an open meeting in regards to legal fees, but
Right.
I don't know if there's an avenue to look at the stuff and what we're, so we can kind of get together as a board and say, what are we actually spending this on? I just don't feel comfortable.
Yeah,
is
maybe
all.
coming to executive session. One of the things, and it doesn't say on the letter, that there's an absolute deadline for submission of this bar, but I did receive an email from the PED, from David Vigil, that says, can you please get your SEG, adjustment in, because they want to work it into the next payments, which would be, our next payment would be March 10th. So if for the next board meeting, if you wanted to have executive session and we could do the legal fees, we could decide at that time, what. I don't know, I'm not in any position to recommend, but just a suggestion.
And can these two items be separated out as two separate budget adjustments? Like one be the SEG and another be the legal fees?
No.
They have to be together.
We have to budget the $103,000 in its totality in order for it to be submitted, because what they've allotted is $103,000.
Okay, so we could table this until we can get more information?
That's kind of what, just because, everything else that we look at the budget, you can tell us exactly what we're spending it on. You just said for vocational, we're spending it on welding gloves and stuff like that. But for this, due to the nature of what we're spending it on, we can't make that, we can't have that in an open forum. So, I just would feel comfortable. I think we have time if we could, and I know the motion's still out there, but if we could just maybe table it and go into executive session and discuss those costs. I think that'd be, at least doing our due diligence in approving this.
Absolutely.
Do I hear a second? Motion dies due to lack of second.
Okay, did you want me to remove my motion so that we could table it for the next board meeting, or it just
No,
died?
that can be another motion to table.
I'll move that we motion this item and we go into executive session to discuss.
Molina seconds.
To table for the next meeting? Okay. Mr. Cordova made a motion to table this item for the next meeting. Do I hear a second?
Molina second.
Second by Mr. Molina. Any other questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moves us to unfinished
Thank you.
business.
Thank you, Ms. Holguin.
You're welcome.
Under unfinished business, we have Ms. Davis report giving an update on teacher
Thank you, Terry.
process and
Sorry.
interviews.
Hope you're feeling better, Terry.
Hello, Mr. President, members of the board, and Mrs. Superintendent. The update for the exit meeting, after meeting with Mr. Kennedy, he said we do not have to put it in policy because this is information for the district to make improvements. Although, so with having said that, I'll go ahead and formulate a committee that has a person from every department that can have a voice on what kind of questions. He did give me a set of questions that we can choose from and look at, as well as I've researched other questions that we can look at, as well as the committee bringing questions for an exit interview. And then he also stated that due to it being personnel, that any information that we do get on these exit meetings will not be discussed in a board meeting or in closed session due to it being personnel. So those are the things he strongly suggested. Any questions?
Yes, did you discuss survey, anonymous survey?
Say that again?
Did you discuss anonymous surveys?
Yes, and it's still, because we have a small district and if we have one or two people, that information is still personnel, and I cannot disclose it during a board meeting or in an executive session because of what they might state in there, and we don't want to end up in a lawsuit.
If there are questions that are, how do you rate this? 3, 4, 5, you know, that kind of stuff, and not any narrative. That would not be a violation of disclosure.
Again, when he talked about anything about personnel, regardless of what survey we do, because it is someone answering, and whether it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, it's still someone that can be discovered due to the small district, and it still can affect them in one way or another. And he really advised again not to have those discussions in a board meeting because it's regarding still personnel.
Okay, so that would then that would require a closed session? Or?
Not even in a closed session. Not in a closed session, not in a board meeting. This is solely for the purpose of the staff to meet with the superintendent and looking at of how to improve the district. And not so much to looking at what personnel is giving back as feedback, but to look at the feedback more of how do we make improvements or adjustments within our district.
And not necessarily meeting with superintendent, it could be human
It could be human resources, it can be with individual schools, it just depending on what is put on a survey.
And I'd like to add on to what Mr. Guadiana was saying, that I think we do need narratives because it gives us a lot more information than a simple number on a scale. And if it's okay with Mr. President, I'd like to be on that committee that is created.
And like I said, Serena, he did give me some really good questions and the whys you asked those questions. And that's why he said if you're really wanting to do that, you know, we talked about it, and I know that prior to our meeting we had talked, and he's like, why are you waiting for an exit meeting? You should be asking the people that are staying what's working, what's keeping them here, instead of doing exit meetings. That most companies are moving away from exit meetings, like I stated way back in my previous statement, is that you should be asking the people that are staying, what keeps you here, what makes you happy, what do we need to keep doing? Because we do have the people that leave and move on, and they sometimes are not going to be truthful on why they leave. So it's, again, a lot of people are moving away from that and more doing surveys of what keeps you here, what makes this district work for you, what is good, and what do we need to make improvements on. So it's just one of those things, but when we do formulate the committee, those are the discussions we can have.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to ask people who are in the district, what do they love and where's room for improvement? I think that's a great idea.
So any other questions?
Conversely, that is a good direction to go. But the question is, are teachers willing to stand up and say things that may draw attention to themselves either? So it's a double-edged sword either way we go.
It is, and I know that I've been in districts, and I think in this district we've had those kind of surveys of what's working and what's not, and even with meeting with staff and principals and saying, hey, how do we make improvements? Because that's one of the things you always want to keep doing, is making improvements within your own building and within your own district or within your own department. So all great ideas, and we'll consider everything once I send out an email and make sure that we have someone represented from all areas. And I'll give you an update once we meet and have a discussion, and I'll be asked to be put on the agenda to just kind of let you guys know where we're at and what direction we're going with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Okay, this brings us to the next discussion. At the next board meeting, we'll be looking to reorganize the board. It can stay like it is with the appointment of, or the selection of a secretary who was, where Frank Gomez was. We don't have one right now. Or it can be reorganized. So you can start thinking of what we can do for the next board meeting, which will be an action item.
Mr. President, along with that also, you know, we had some amazing applicants for board, for people who put in for the board. You know, when we look at board reorganization as well, and we look at finance committee and audit committee, again, we had great applicants that do live in our district that maybe we could consider to possibly be put on some of those committees as well.
Okay. Move this to administration.
So I'm just going to ask a question before we go to administration. We do have Central Elementary. We have a couple of people who have been waiting for a while. Would it be okay to move them up and go ahead and allow them to present on their school highlights so they can get home?
Sure.
I know one has a long ways to go. Thank you, appreciate that.
Welcome.
Good evening, thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, and Ms. Barela. Thank you very much for moving us up. We really appreciate that. We just wanted to tell you thank you for giving us the opportunity to highlight the great things that are going on at Central Elementary. We did have, a few weeks ago, we did participate in the Great Kindness Challenge in our school. Our school counselor, Ms. Judy Cruz, did an amazing job setting that up. It involved things like an inspirational quote read every morning, and then there was a checklist that the kids could go through of different acts of kindness that they could take part in. And the kids really took to that. It was an amazing week, and it just really taught the kids that kindness means a lot to a lot of people, and that it's not just for a week, and they have continued that on. I don't know how many times a week I get complimented on my shoes now, so it's great, I love it. But they've done great things with that. And so another thing that we are doing is, I did bring Miss Bethany Zamora with me. She is a 5th grade teacher, and she has really taken it upon herself to look at STEAM, and she'll explain what that is, but she has implemented it to the fullest extent in her classroom and has inspired other teachers to do that as well. And so she has a short presentation on that, so I will turn it over.
Thank you. So I did provide a packet for you to look at, just so that you can see what the students have to do before they can actually start the project. STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. And that's basically what the future is for our students. They have to be able to integrate all of those things, all of those topics together to solve problems. So what we've done in my classroom is we're doing a program basically called Steaming Ahead for Success. And if you look through the project that we just did, my students had to figure out how they were going to build a skyscraper. So they were the engineers. They had to look up different types of skyscrapers, engineering, blueprinting, the materials that it used to build the actual skyscraper, and then they had to look at the materials that they were going to actually be provided to work with. So after they did all of their research, they had to draw a blueprint that would show me, okay, so instead of, they use steel rods, you're providing me with spaghetti sticks, this is how we're going to do it. I have clay, they have cement, this is how I'm going to use it. So they had to blueprint everything out, measurements, angles, the whole 9 yards. And it had to be blueprinted out where it actually made sense, and they could show me how they were gonna actually use their materials to mimic the materials of the skyscraper. So once the blueprint is okayed by Mrs. Zamora, they start building with the supplies that they've been given. And it is a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of collaborating, putting things together. This is working, this is not working, how can we fix it? So just the collaboration of them together, using all of these skills that they are going to need in the real world, is an amazing thing to watch. I've been doing it, Joyce, 8 years now. And it just keeps growing and growing. And this is the way the world is going towards education. If you look into different countries, this is the way teaching is happening. It's not just language arts, it's not just math, it's not just all these subjects, separate areas. It's all meshed together so that they can see how all the stuff that they're learning in the classroom is important in the big picture. So I have a little slideshow for you to see my kids in action. What's that? When to switch it? Okay, I'll go ahead and read it. STEM education helps young students think critically and creatively about the world around them. It also prepares them to be leaders who will shape the future economy and global markets. Definition of STEAM: science, technology, engineering, art, and math. STEAM education, incorporating elements of art to provide intrinsic and personal creative connections in the fields of science, technology, filmmaking, mathematics, and engineering design. So at Central, I use the New Mexico State Science Standards to drive my instruction and educational goals. And in doing that, I go through, and luckily I've been doing it for a while, so I can meet the standards pretty easily since I've been making these lessons. So I use the scientific method to develop questions, design and conduct experiment, analyze data, make predictions, and communicate results. And of course, the scientific method: purpose, hypothesis, materials, procedures, observations, results, and conclusion. And this is the latest one that I just spoke about, where they're trying to figure out how to follow their blueprint, which you can kind of see down here. They actually do have a blueprint that they're trying to follow. And it's giving them the opportunity to collaborate with each other and change planning and engineering as they go through the process. This is an actual blueprint, and you can see where they had to label their materials that they were going to have to get to use: the tape, the string, the cardboard, the clay, and that was a blueprint of the actual building itself. And this is them just using their math and measuring skills to create their engineering outcomes. As an educator, I'm able to integrate core subjects into one lesson while fostering language arts standards and writing expectations set for 5th grade. And this is an example of a freestanding structure. This type of design promotes higher level thinking that will be applicable in the real world. And then this is just them trying to figure out, how am I going to keep it up without holding it with something else? And so this is a trial and error project for them, that they just kind of got to think on their own and have some materials and just see what they could do with it. So, young inventors shape our future. Working collaboratively builds leadership and promotes a positive classroom community. So thank you so much for giving me the time to show you some of the things that we're doing at Central it's just a positive school. Some of the teachers are kind of buying into it and doing these types of things as well. And I think that if you look at this and you look at the future of education, this is really the direction that we're going in. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zamora.
I just want to thank Ms. Zamora. You walk into her classroom when these kids are doing these projects, and they are so excited. They are excited to be learning. They're excited to be there. They're willing to miss anything to be able to participate in these things. So thank you very much for the effort you put in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we'll move to administration. So we did have Mr. Cordova, Ms. Murillo, Mr. Molina attend the February NMSBA training. So we'll allow each of them to give a little report about their experience, their training, the sessions that they attended. So whoever wants to go first.
Superintendent, Mr. President, board members, audience. We left the house on the 2nd at 10 o'clock, and we were traveling pretty fast because we were fighting a snowstorm. And it wasn't too bad here, but it was, we got to Santa Fe about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we just barely beat the snow. It came down. We didn't get a whole lot of it, but it was cold, very cold. So the next day on February 3rd, this training lasted from February the 3rd to February the 5th at noon. On the 3rd, we had breakfast, and then from 9 to 1:30, we went to the Roundhouse. And it was a kind of an eye-opener at the Roundhouse because, first of all, you had to provide that you had been tested, and you had to provide a driver's license or a picture that it was you, and there wasn't very many people there. You couldn't gather in groups. We had a visit with Mr. Luis Terrazas. We left a message for Javi Morales and for Saaya, which they were busy on the floor. Then from 3 to 5:30, I had a meeting with the board of directors, and several things happened to the board of directors. One of the things that's going on, and I think the superintendent has gotten a word on this, is at the current time, there is a student achievement award that can be done. The name is due on March 11th. The New Mexico School Board Association will furnish the award at no cost to the school. The award is a $50 award. If school wants more than one award, it'll cost $50 per award that you do. I know that in past years we've been at some places where some schools have 5, 6, 7 awards or whatever. They pay for the rest of them. This award can be a school board member, administrator, a teacher, a staff member, a parent, a community member, or a volunteer. So what I'm asking is for the next board meeting that we have each board member bring a person, a teacher, administrator, whoever they would like to give one to, or if at that time there's a choice of more than one, we'll have to address that. And like I said, $50 each. The next thing that we discussed in the board of directors is usually scholarships are given by the New Mexico School Board Association. And in our region, there is 8 members, 8 schools, where each board or each scholarship was $1,000 each. We got together and we talked about it, hard times. So this year, the good news is they're $1,200. They're given to a senior. Our region is Deming, Lordsburg, Cobre, Animas, Silver, Reserve, and Quemado. And the bad news is that this year, Deming, Norrisburg, and Cobre are not eligible for the scholarship. The reason they're not eligible is because they were awarded a scholarship last year. So the following year, you don't get a scholarship. And I'll tell you what, in years past, since they give 3 scholarships, we have talked about it. Well, can one school get 2 scholarships or whatever? Absolutely not. It's just one per school. And I do have the forms, not that it's going to help us, but I do have the forms for applying. Okay, the next thing that we discussed is, I just mentioned the region, and we have a Region 8 meeting, which is March the 22nd. And Lordsburg is the ones that are going to host it. But in talking to their superintendent, to their board members, we have chosen to not go in person. We're going to do it virtual. And the reason that they wanted to go in person, but it's spring break for them, and we would only have one day to prepare for it. So they felt that they'd rather stay virtual. So that's the way it is. March 22nd at I think it starts at 5:30. We've got agendas and stuff coming. Okay, on February the 4th, I attended the following training sessions. The first one that I attended, and these are 1-hour training sessions, was the first amendment rights on controversial issues at the school. The second one was understanding ethics and transparency issues. The third one was an overview on special education. The next day on Saturday, we had sessions in the morning till noon. The first one that I attended was legalized cannabis in our schools. And this was quite a big discussion. They were talking about medical, and they were talking about recreational. And I have some paperwork here for if somebody wants to see it in the training that we had. The other one that I went to was avoiding procurement pitfalls. What is the board's role? And this one covered quite a bit if you people heard about what happened in Albuquerque Public Schools, where one person was using that to get money and whatever. The last one that I attended was parental rights, and that's for parents' control on education for the children of public schools. They didn't say too much there about private schools or charter schools. It was mostly centered on public schools. And that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Cordova, for that. This was a learning experience for me, going to the Capitol and speaking with our senators and representatives, learning about the capital outlay process. It was a huge learning experience for me. There was a lot of takeaways. I think on the first day that we were there, we had new board member training. Me and Mr. Molina went to, and I think my biggest takeaway from that was that we need a strategic plan. That was a huge message, that if your district does not have a strategic plan, that's really hindering your progress, and that the strategic plan is tied to when you hire a superintendent, these are your goals, this is what we expect, setting benchmarks, and then it can be used as a superintendent evaluation. So if you don't have a strategic plan, it's hard to evaluate the superintendent if you're meeting those benchmarks and those goals. So that was a big eye-opener for me. They also talked about that they have, and there was districts talking. I believe Bloomfield was presenting some ideas, and I can't remember the other districts, Taos. And one of the things they talked about was that they have a professional development committee in their district that steers the PD for the teachers for their district. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Let me see. And then they started talking about the board's role, and one of my takeaways was that transparency with the board is essential. You have to have, with the public, trust, stability, and compassion. Those were the three things they said a board really needs to have to be successful. And we were able to see the Secretary of Ed went and talked to us on the February 4th, I believe that was Friday. And he talked about how there will be pay increases if coming this March of 3%, July 1st, 4%, and districts, if HB2 passes, districts that choose to do the extended learning time will get a 3% raise. In addition to the 7%. So it gives incentive for districts and teachers to participate in that. And the Socorro district talked about how their extended learning time they use for trades. They have welding classes, they have CDL classes, culinary classes, truck driving, yeah. So I thought that was interesting to be able to excite the students to want to come, especially if you're going to be able to get these certifications. And I think those are my main highlights I wanted to share. Any questions? Okay, thank you. And in regards to what Mr. Cordova said about the paperwork, you can also go to the NMSBA website, and they have uploaded the PowerPoints that all the PowerPoints are on there, so if you'd like more information.
It's always good to go last because everybody said everything already. So, Mrs. Murillo and Mr. Cordova touched on a lot of stuff, and I don't really want to reiterate what they said. I think some of the key takeaways that I got from there, really, and she already touched on it, was a strategic plan. I mean, it really does, it guides the district on what to do. If you're a teacher or an administrator or staff and you don't know what to do, all you got to do is look at that strategic guide. It's going to guide you. It's a living document. We can change it. We can decide the amount of years that it's going to be effective, and did it work for those 3 years or 5 years? And if it did, then hey, let's fine tune it so it works a little bit better. If it didn't work, let's change some of the goals. But it definitely starts with a vision and a mission. So I think we, as a board and as administration, really need to start thinking about that, because definitely once we get to the superintendent thing, I think that's one of our other priorities is that strategic plan. So I think we really need to think about that. Another thing that really struck me was, in going to the roundhouse and attempting to talk to some Congress people that, because they're very busy out there in the legislature, but there are actually some schools out there that have lobbyists, that work for them to lobby for money. And that struck me as very interesting. It's something that, I don't know if we can further down the line, I think we got more pressing needs in the district. But once we do that, maybe that might be something. And, same thing, it was kind of like drinking from a fire hose with a lot of these classes. There's a lot of information thrown at you, really good information. It's amazing the amount of institutional knowledge when you step in there with the amount of, administrators, educators, folks in the legislature. There's just a huge amount of information that gets given to you. But overall, it was really great, and I was glad to go over there and learn some stuff. And just to keep on harping on it, I think that strategic plan is one of the biggest things that I think we need to. The biggest thing I got out of that meeting. So, if there's no questions, that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. brings us to public input. This time we'll entertain anything from public in reference to our agenda. Daniel, do we have anything out there? Okay. Moves us to superintendent report.
On superintendent report, we do have 2 fundraisers. The first one is the baseball team by Adrian Acosta will be selling kettle corn, taking kettle corn orders for spirit packs. The second is Skills USA, Mr. Gary Garcia. They will be selling nameplates, and the purpose is for state and national conferences. Facilities update. Oh, he's already there, Mr. Peru.
Welcome. I want to say welcome, Ms. Murillo and Mr. Molina. We really appreciate you taking the time to be on our board. It does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. So we want to say thank you for wanting to be on the board. We really appreciate it. And if there's anything else we can do from administration, let us know. We can help you with. Hopefully we can get you the answers. Okay. First of all, I want to give an update on some of the things that I talked about a few of these things, so I just want to give you an update. My first update is on the buses. Bus 22 is still in Albuquerque. As I had come before and visited with you, I was in the process of trying to visit with some other companies to see if we couldn't delete the issue that we were having with Bus 22. At this time, Bluebird and Cummings have denied our request to delete the DEF system on it. It's a software program, but they have not given us permission to do that. And I guess there's probably another 4 districts that are dealing with the same issue we're dealing with, just in this area. So we were not able to do that. So, and the reason being is because it's under warranty. So we have to wait. And the good news is the other bus that we purchased, it is in Albuquerque. They just finished putting the USB ports and taking care of the air conditioning. It will be at their facility on at the end of next week. We will be sending the graphics so that they can take care of the graphics. I visited with Mr. Gerhardt last week because we know we have never put any graphics for the band. The band has been very accomplished, and we have not had any of the graphics of them. We know we have a lot of the sports and things of that nature, so we're going to be putting some of the band logos on there and trying to, so they feel like they participate with that also. And that'll, and hopefully once we get the graphics to them, they said that we can have the bus probably within 3 weeks. So we're really looking forward to that because, we are short on those buses. On a good note also is Bus 18. They completed the work on that one. It took them a month to complete everything. They had to do a tear down on a lot of the oil leaks that we had. They were able to complete the work. We did the inspection last week on Thursday. We passed the inspection, so we have scheduled that bus for trips now. They were cleaning it today. We got the oil changed on it today, got everything else taken care of, so now we will be sending that bus out. That used to be our gem, and now it's 2 years from retirement, but it's still a good running bus, and I think it'll be able to transport our kids well. We had the air conditioner worked on last year, and it cost us $4,000 to get that air conditioner up and running. So we will have, when we get all our buses online, all our buses will have air conditioning, because that was one of the biggest complaints we had all the time, especially in the spring sports. You would travel up to Albuquerque in the summer for track and baseball and softball, and the kids were always upset. Some coaches were upset because we would flip the coin to see who would be able to take the one with air conditioning, and the ones that lost in the flip, the coaches were excited when they said, yeah, let's just do a flip. And then when they lost, they were a little bummed out that they didn't get the bus. But luckily, now with us other ones, we'll have air conditioning for all our buses, so everybody will be able to travel in comfort. One of the things also is on the facilities master plan. It's almost complete. In visiting with Mr. Paul Aguilar and Chris Aguilar, one of the things is they were waiting on a couple of things that we're doing. We're working right now with Tremco Roofing Company, and what we're trying to do is get all the cost analysis and everything to them so that we are able to move on some of these other items, because we want to be able to put that into the facility master plan so we have that we can work it into our budget when we do get to that point. One of the things, I'll just give you a little update on the roofs. We went in and we did the scanning on the child's daycare, the one we have back here, the daycare, and we also did the scan on the roof here because we have really bad leaks on this roof, not the metal roof, but all the TPO roof. One of the things is the cost analysis came in for the daycare, and that one is going to run us right around $50,000 to $55,000. They said it might be a little more, just depends on a couple of things that when we get the scan back. but that'll be to restored and a complete set of it, which is really desperately needed. We also have put into the budget, so we will be able to put in a refrigeration system for them. Right now, they run on swamp coolers, so we want to be able to put in a refrigeration system also, and then a complete HVAC system to be able to handle everything there at that daycare. The fine arts, the cost to do the fine arts will be much more. It's about $200,000 to complete the roof here at the fine arts. It's past its lifetime already. We constructed this building in 1997, so it has already passed the duration of what we would have been able to work with that roof. So that's what we're looking at. So it's a little pricier, but that's what we're looking at. The most expensive roof to fix in our district is going to be Snell Middle School. We are having a tremendous amount of issues there. We have a tremendous amount of leaks there. It's not going to be just a patch job. So we're looking at having to budget that into our facility master plan, because that cost is going to run us right around $450,000 to $500,000. So that will take a big chunk of our Senate Bill 9 monies when we do decide to do that roof. So one of the things that we talked about is being able to patch and Band-Aid a few of the areas that are really, really bad right now to get us to that point so we can be able to do that roof. So that's just the ones on those. One of the things on the daycare, we will also be going to a pre-bid meeting on March 2nd. We will do the pre-bid meeting so we can get that the daycare taken care of, because that is also part of some of the CARES money. So we need, not part of the CARES, it's the...
It's a grant that we wrote specifically for daycare. So the roofing project, the refrigeration system, and then if any money's left, still for carpet as well.
Yes. But I know there's a timeline to get it done, so that's one of the reasons we're moving on it, and we have to have the pre-bid meeting so we can be able to move on that so we don't lose those monies. Okay? Another thing, I want to say thank you for approving the air quality one, because all the units are in. We ordered 210 units. They arrived Thursday of this past week, and they arrived on the 10th, and on the 11th, we were already putting them in. We started at the high school because we have some rooms that are vacant up there that we can move kids into. Once we get those finished, we can move some classrooms around. So we started putting them in. It's gonna take a process, and it might seem like a long time, but in order for us to do them correctly, it is gonna take us a month and a half to 2 months to put those in. And we have everybody working on it. The reason it's gonna take us a while is because we're all trying to make sure we do them correctly and we do them right. This is the first time we put in this kind of units. But like I said, the first one, it took us probably about 3-4 hours to get it in, make sure it was running correctly, make sure the air quality was good. And once we did that, it seemed like, let me get some water, hold on. Breathing through the mask is horrible, and speaking. Like I said, it's going to take us about a month and a half to 2 months to complete the implementation and installing them all. Like I said, we started at the high school. One of the things that's really good is once we complete the high school, we'll move on to another school. One of the things that's really holding us up on things is because we have everybody working. We were hoping that we'd be able to free up the plumber and the electrician to help with a lot of it. They came in and worked on the first one together. They came in and worked on the first one together, but the bad thing that happened is that we have all the things that we have to complete for the fire marshal. And if you happen to go to the high school right now, our construction guy and our electrician and our plumber are trying to complete everything that we have to that we have to fix for the fire marshal. One of the things that's really taking time for us is we have to move all where we put the fire extinguishers, they were at 72 inches tall. We have to make sure that the top of them is at 5 foot, 60 inches. So we're having to move them all down in order to be in compliance with the fire marshal's office. So that is cutting them. So that what that is entailing is that it'd be nice if it was just drywall. We could cut through the drywall, cut the 2x4s, reset some 2x4s, and we'd be done. But we're cutting the block. We're making sure we're framing. So if it has any other structural parts, so we're trying to even move some of them to a different location. So we've been doing all that also, so we can complete the things that we need to do for them also. One of the things that's really good is the electrician. Mr. Cardosa has been in training also, because we're looking at, we completed the work for the gyms, like I said before, with the LED lights, but he's been going to training so he can be able to do that for the district. Every time a light goes out, instead of, waiting, so we can see how we can do to fix it with the ballasts, because the ballasts are getting very expensive right now. A ballast is running about $400 on some of these lights, and it's just way too expensive. But he's going through all the process so he can learn how to make sure he completes and put in the LED light correctly. So we can, little by little, as the lights go out, we'll be replacing them. We replaced the north hall halfway down with LED lights already. So, I mean, the teachers have come out and they feel like it's just really bright in there, but it's just we were able to complete that. And so that's what he's been doing. As the lights go out, he's starting to replace those also. And he's also replacing the exit lights with LED lights also, so that we can have that, and hopefully it'll help us with the energy. You know, because one of the things some years back, we went to the geothermal system, and we run on everything, in high school practically runs on electricity. You know, we use gas very, very little. The only thing we use the gas for is for the water heaters for the kitchen. And other than that, it's all electrical. So, you know, we're hoping that we can help cut down on consumption that way. One of the things also is we did the walkthrough for the bullpens at the softball field. We completed that walkthrough. The bullpens came out great. The coaches really like them. The girls really like it. So now we're in the process of working on everything so we can reposition where we had the batting cages, because that's where the bullpens are now. So in visiting with the coaches, we're trying to set up a design differently that we can set up and be able to use the bullpens as the batting cages also. So as soon as we have those plans, we'll move on it, and then I'll bring what the cost will be to you all so we can see what we can do. The bullpens at the baseball field were poured wrong. So when we did the walkthrough with the softball, we went over and did the baseball, so they had to come back in and saw cut everything back out on the concrete, because what had happened is they had laid out the baseball bullpens kind of like they did the softballs. The top of it was flat for like 3 feet, so it didn't give the incline down on the pitcher's mound as you have to. You know, what it's supposed to do is from the kicker plate, you have to 4 inches, and then that slope drops. So since they were flat, they had to come back and saw cut all that. They completed all that work on Saturday. So now I'm going to do the walkthrough with Mr. Jesus from, I can't remember his last name right now. Yeah, Jesus Morales and Moreno. And we will be doing the walkthrough next week sometime and getting that complete. So then that way the bullpens for the baseball will be done. You know, there was a few questions asked last time. We did the bullpens at the baseball field. There's one on the visitor side. There's one on the home side. The softball has everything on the home side because it didn't fit because of the parking and all the things that we needed to move there. So, but I mean, what's good is they look good. So one of the things is, hopefully after we do the walkthrough, we can sign off on those and we'll be able to use them. The kids were going to be using them today. They were going to see how they worked and work on that. Okay. One of the things that we also talked to Mr. Moreno about was getting some screen for the baseball field, because we have a lot of the foul balls that still hit the concession area. So I asked them to give us some prices to do the netting over to the other side of the dugout. So hopefully we can avoid that, because we've had some kids hurt that play in that grass area right in front of the concession. So I asked for some bids on that so he can give us a price. So hopefully we can, you know, I just worry about a kid getting hurt or an adult getting hurt that's sitting there eating they're right outside of the concession. So you know, hopefully he'll give us those prices soon and we'll be able to take care of that. Is there any other questions on anything that I've covered so far?
So I have a few questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is all completely new to me. Looking through some documentation that was sent via email, if I'm understanding this correctly, there were several things that Hallis was paid for, but didn't actually do. And is there, what is the policy or procedure for big construction projects like that? Like, how did that happen is what I'm wondering.
Well, there's some things I can talk about and there's some things I can't talk about.
Okay.
When you have a project manager, the project manager handles all that. Like when we do construction on these roofs, I'll be the project manager, so I will handle all the projects, the whole complete project, but I will also ensure that we have everything completed. You know, because one of the things you meet on a weekly basis with the construction company, you meet with the engineers, you meet with the architects, you meet on a weekly basis, and you take minutes of what you do. So you have to be able to complete that, so that if you have to come back to it, you know, you say, well, wait, on this day is the day we were supposed to complete this. Why was it not completed? So on the areas with Hallis, there was a few things missed. So they were not able to complete it. They have now completed them. We dealt with CES also. CES and administration from here. We all went through the contracts to make sure that we had everything fulfilled. And the bullpens was the biggest thing. There was a couple of things that they thought had not been done, but they were done, which was actually the draining system. The draining system was all put in, and it was put in correctly. They did use, like, one of the things on the drainage system is they used some caps that instead of using grading You know, one of the things is they used their flat plates, and they actually look like the sewer plates that you use, like, you know, in the big street, on the street, you know, you put a sewer plate out there. Those plates are similar. I'm actually glad that they used what they did, because they used those plates and then they drilled holes in those plates. Okay, by doing that, instead of using the grading, like when you use grading, it lets a lot of debris in there, and it causes a lot of problems for maintenance later, you know. Instead of having to do so much preventative maintenance to keep those clean, the way they drilled the holes and they did all that, it's actually only the water that goes in there. The debris stays on top. So the only thing we have to keep clean is those covers. You know, so one of the things is just making sure that the project manager stays on top of the project. You know?
So there should be minutes available from these weekly check-ins?
There should be.
And
There were no minutes.
There's
so
no
there's
minutes
no
for
documentation?
no
Okay.
minutes for any of the turf projects.
Okay. And is it policy to have minutes when
No.
these weekly
It's not
things?
policy, it's just a common practice. Everybody,
common practice.
everybody that's in that, make sure that you cover that. You know, and the architects are the ones that a lot of times will come in and say, you know, this is exactly what we need to do. We need to make sure, because they're on top of the project also, besides the project manager, and making sure that everything is, you know, because when you do the walkthrough weekly, you also, you know, like I said, we just did a walkthrough for the bullpens. Every week when we meet, we walk the whole project. For example, if we're doing construction on a new building, we walk the whole building, making sure, see how the electrical part's coming out, making sure how the plumbing's coming out. We have the plans with us, so we're going through the whole project. So the walkthrough is not, and the meetings are not just like for an hour. When you have a Tuesday, for example, scheduled, that whole Tuesday you spend that on that project, and you're there all day with them, you know. And then the following Tuesday you meet again, for example.
Okay.
And there were biweekly meetings that were held throughout the project with the project manager. Okay.
But there's no documentation of those?
No.
Okay. And when they make these changes, like with the drainage system, is there like a work order that goes through? Like, these are going to be
Yes,
the changes?
there should be a work order, and there should be
These are the
documented.
price changes?
And there should be documentation for that.
And you have all that information?
We do not.
Who does?
We have a change order, but I don't know all the documentation. I didn't have anything to do with the project, so I don't know all the answers to that.
Okay.
I just took over right now for the bullpens, and that's why I'm covering the bullpens. I knew about the drainage because Jesus and I had gone over it to make sure that it was completed. When they said that project wasn't completed, Jesus Moreno and myself got together, and we came over, we looked at all the blueprints, and then he showed me where everything was installed and how they installed it all.
So who was the project manager? Was it Mr. Mendoza?
Mr. Mendoza was the project
Okay,
manager.
and so
yes,
when
ma'am.
he left, did that project get transferred to anybody, or it just? They were
Yeah.
completed?
Yes, they were signed off and completed at that point.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have, you know, based on some questions that were asked, Terry, myself, Mr. Peru, we have been meeting with CES. We have been having meetings with Hellas to find out where we are. We do have some additional responses that'll be going out on that email. And so, Terry, I don't know if you want to go ahead and explain the process for the payments through CES?
So ordinarily, you have an AP process where, you know, you have a PO, and then when the project is complete, then you get an invoice and you pay the invoice, right? So, and I'm talking for services. So when you have a CES project, you have the middleman, which means that CES has run the procurement. They're a cooperative education service for the 89 districts and the charter schools in New Mexico, that they provide that service for the member fee that we have to participate in their services. They provide a big service by running the procurement. They're also considered the contract manager on the projects, okay? So once you issue a purchase order, and on CES has two ways of procuring. So you have your direct procurements, which they just started last year, that showed that you can procure the vendor direct, and then you can actually skip CES, but it's in the CES system. All right, so the procurements for contractors that are bigger projects, those go through CES because you want CES to be your contract manager. I mean, you really do want that follow through with CES. So in that process, the payment applications, the pay apps, are submitted both to the project manager at the district level and also to CES simultaneously. So that's how Hellis did it. And then the project manager from the district reviews it and tells CES, okay, well, we did this part, we reviewed this part, and it's good for CES, then invoices the district. Then the district pays CES, not the vendor. So in Hellis's instance, we never paid Hellis. We actually never processed checks directly to Hellis. We always process through CES. Okay, now with these particular bond projects, there's another level of payment because New Mexico Finance Authority is actually the financial institution that is holding the funds. So we don't have those funds in our bank accounts, the 9 bank accounts that we reconcile regularly here. They're New Mexico Finance Authority. So when we get an invoice from CES or for any bond project, we don't actually issue a check to the vendor. We issue a requisition to New Mexico Finance Authority in order for Finance Authority to make the payment directly to the vendor. So, and in this case, it would have been a CES invoice to New Mexico Finance Authority. So Finance Authority then issues a check to CES, then CES pays Hellis, and then Hellis pays their subcontractors. So there's so many levels of who pays who in bond projects, especially because of the amount of money that is issued, you know, for a bond project. You know, there were 2 issuances for this particular bond issue, which was the 2017 for certain bond projects, and then the 2019. Hellis's, the athletic fields were under the 29 issuance. Okay, so this is going to be a bigger discussion that goes through in the work session that you guys are scheduled for with Regina, which is our financial advisor from RBC Capital. And they kind of tell us how to maintain certain levels of funding, certain levels of tax base, and so forth. So this is just kind of a intro to what you guys are going to go over more with Regina from the RBC Capital, and they're our financial advisor, bond advisor. Okay? Thank you. Does that help?
If I could get you mentioned that the involved with CES is they're the project manager, but there was also a district
No, they're the
representative.
contract manager.
Okay,
So-
they're the contract
yeah,
manager,
so
but there's also.
we have the project manager here on site. The district still has to monitor the project, but they manage the contract part of it. So when when these issues that you're talking about were pointed out, we went back to CES. They actually have the documentation that initially we didn't have on the progress and completion rates and so forth of those projects. Those were not housed here at the district. So if an IPRA request comes in for a particular thing, the district has to have the documents as part of the possession of the district. We did get them from CES, but they were not initially ours.
So who was the district person? Was that Mr. Mendoza then? That was the district?
The project manager was Mr. Mendoza.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Anything else?
The bond was actually paid in first half and second half of that. And Mr. Mendoza was the project manager for the second half.
Correct.
Okay. Who was the manager for the first half?
I am.
Okay, you were involved in the first half?
Yes, sir. And we're still working on the first half because of the monies. Mhm.
That
It's the
didn't
gym-
include
it's
the baseball
gym and-
fields?
No, the baseball fields were that's the second half.
That's the second half?
Which the second half is like the football field, the baseball field, and the softball field,
And then it also had the marquee.
the marquees.
And the parking lot improvements at San Lorenzo were phase two. So they were listed as phase one and phase two projects. So all the phase two projects were the second drop for the bond, the second issue.
Yes, sir.
And has there been any kind of review to make sure there's not been any oversight like there was with this particular with the baseball fields?
We're looking at a few things just to make sure we covered all the bases, you know, and we had, like we said, we contacted CES. We have now sat with CES numerous times to make sure we have everything completed. And the bullpens will be the last part of this completion. And once we sign off on that, we will be taking care of with the baseball fields and the softball field and the football field.
And with respect to everything else?
It's going as planned. As soon as we can finance some of the things that we need to, then we'll move on some of the projects. You know, one of the things that we're looking at.
On the projects that were completed in phase two? Is that what you're asking?
No,
Or
phase
phase
one
one.
as well as phase two.
The phase one, the ones that are completed already, we finalized all that. The only ones that we have not completed is the two gyms that we had looked at, you know, and we have visited about that numerous times, and those are the two that are not completed in phase one.
Okay, and so,
And they will be part of the discussion
Yes, 'cause we
on
wanna-
March 7th, along with the facilities master plan and
Yes.
our financial advisor.
Yes.
and is that meeting open to the public?
It's a work session, so work
It's a work
sessions
session, so
are
it would
open,
be-
correct, Mr. Sepulveda?
Mhm.
So, yes?
We will not be broadcasting it, but
No.
work sessions are open.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, just a couple of other things. Again, we have mentioned the work sessions with Regina with RBC Capital, February 23rd, 5 o'clock to 6:30, Cobre High School Library. And then again on March 7th, and March 7th from 5 to 6:30, Cobre High School Library. That one will include discussion of the auxiliary gym and the facilities master plan. They'll both be at the Cobre High School Library.
Ms. Varela, in regards to the February 23rd meeting, so I had a work conflict, so I'll be in Colorado in some meetings. Will you guys, is there any way I could join virtually?
So it won't be broadcast, but I can, you and I can work together and we can put my computer on and you can join that.
Okay, that'd be great, thank you.
The other thing is, I did receive a use of facilities request from Howie Morales. I did just barely get it from him today. As we all know, he's been in Santa Fe for most of the month. I want the board to know that I did give verbal permission for the Grant County Youth Basketball to use our Snell and Hurley facilities, and I will bring that to the board as an official approval on the next board meeting. The other thing is, you know, you've all been talking about a strategic plan, so I had a discussion with CES, with David Chavez from CES on a strategic plan and what services they provide. So CES does work with districts on strategic plans, so he has actually sent us a proposal, a scope of work, and I did ask him if he would be willing to come to the next board meeting and give a presentation on what CES would do and the work that it would entail in us moving forward with creating a strategic plan for our district. And along with that, I did also talk to him about a facilitator through CES that would help facilitate a board retreat. So his recommendation was that, you know, if we want to do that separately outside the strategic plan, we can, but usually the board retreat is part of the strategic plan because we are developing our goals in order to be able to move forward. So Again, I will ask him to come and present at the next board meeting. And then a question had been brought up also about Title IX coordinators. So Michael Corey will be listed as the district Title IX coordinator. And I believe that concludes my superintendent report.
Okay.
Regarding the workshop, I think it's essential that we have the first part of that to be a self-assessment so that we can go forward with what we have as strengths and what we have as weaknesses and address that as we move forward with a strategic plan.
Well, that is something that they're going to discuss when we talk about our board retreat.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's okay. If I missed that, then.
But not at these
You said
two
work
work
session.
sessions.
You said work session. I think you meant board retreat. Yeah.
I misspoke.
Okay, thank you, Joyce. We don't have a student rep. Public input. This time we'll entertain anything from the public. Daniel, do we have something? Can't. Okay. I can't see out there.
I need to go up there, or do I?
No, you can do there.
Up this, okay. Well, again, board members, for those of you that don't know me, my name is George Esqueda. I've been following the board meetings now for a little bit over a year. Missed the last couple in person, but have been following them online, either live while they're going on, or I've gone back and reviewed the YouTube videos, which again are very helpful, and I think are provide the public an opportunity to see, if they're not able to make it here, what you guys have been discussing. So again, I want to applaud you for keeping that going, and hope that continues. But again, for Member Murillo, Member Guadiana, congratulations on your elections. Mr. Molina, congratulations on being appointed and taking the oath of office today. So I want to congratulate you guys on that. And what I want to touch on is the fact that, in following the board meetings for over a year now, what I see today, the discussions that were had, the questions that were asked, it's encouraging to hear that. It shows that there's hopefully some forethought, some planning, and that the district will move in a positive direction rather than it being stagnant, at least in my opinion, over the last couple of years. So again, I want to applaud the returning member, the two new members, because again, I think the majority of the discussion and questions have been coming from you three. So again, I want to applaud you for that. In regards to, and again, it is encouraging to hear that the district is following through with CES to actually get the services that were paid for actually constructed, because again, that is money, that's the public's money. They're the ones that paid for that. They're the ones that financed it through the bond. So again, encouraging to see that that's moving through, and that you guys are hopefully staying on top of it and seeing it through completion, that everything is done. A couple of questions in regards to some items that were brought up today. In regards to these work sessions that are planned for the 23rd and the March 7th, I'm assuming that those will be advertised in the newspaper and that the agendas will be published prior to those work sessions. That way the general public has an opportunity to go on the website, view the agendas, and attend in person if they elect to.
The legal notices have already been sent to the newspaper.
Okay, but as a follow-up, part B of my question was...
So we will have to check with Regina, because she's the one that's going to be running the meeting, to see if she has an agenda. We have not received an agenda. We've only received her PowerPoint presentation. So we would have to follow up with her, because she's the one that's going to be facilitating it.
Okay, but again, I guess because they will be advertised and they're open meetings, the agendas should be published or available to the public 72 hours prior to the meeting.
We'll check with them.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just asking questions, and and the comment that was brought up in regards to the board reorganization and committee members, for those that are serving on or that have volunteered over the past year or so that are serving as current committee members, will they still have the opportunity to continue to serve as committee members, or is the board looking to replace them or come up with a new system in regards to will letters of interest be requested for the audit committee as well as the finance committee?
That's something that we still haven't decided on anything. This is the first time that that's been brought up.
So again, possibly that existing members may not continue to serve on the board or on the committees?
Well, that's, like I said, that's something that this is the first time it's been brought up, so I don't know how or what direction board wants to go with that.
So today was just on the agenda for discussion of it, so at the next board meeting, it'll be as an action item, so that the board will make a decision of which way they're gonna go with that.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I guess my last comment is that, as you guys are all aware, again, like I stated previously, I've been following the board meetings for a little bit over a year. I've asked a number of questions, submitted numerous emails, and what I like to do is respectfully request that when emails be submitted, that they be addressed in a more timely manner. And if they're not going to be able to be addressed within that timely manner, just common courtesy to say, you know what, and we all know we're all busy in today's times, but at least extending that common courtesy to the person that's submitting the email, that, hey, I'm tied up, I received your email, and I'm going to try to get back to you, within a week or something like that. It's just extending that common courtesy to those that are making an effort, not only to bring up the questions, but also provide recommendations and trying to be helpful as well, because there's a number of people within the community that have different expertise, different experiences that I believe can help the district. And again, if they're making the effort to submit an email asking questions, I think that those on the receiving end of the email should at least be professional and courteous to respond to those emails in a timely manner. So again, those are my comments from sitting here now almost 3.5 hours. So again, I want to appreciate thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to present my comments, my concerns, my questions, and as I have in the past, I'll close it by, throwing it back to you guys. If you guys have any questions of me, I'll certainly, be willing to try to entertain any questions that you may have.
I don't have a question, but I do just want to make a comment that my staff has been doing their best to answer emails on a timely basis. I will tell you honestly that most of us don't even get a chance to check our emails till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, because during the day we are so busy working on various things and visiting schools that most of the time we don't even get to look at them until late. So I will defend my staff and say we do our best to answer emails as timely as we can.
Well, no, and like I said, I wasn't trying to be critical, argumentative or anything like that. I was just pointing it out. And like I stated in my emails in the past, I know everybody's busy, but again, if I guess what I'll do is I'll leave it that there's room for improvement, and I see that there is an attempt for an improvement, and that's all we can ask for. So with that, I appreciate it. And again, I'm not trying to be argumentative, and I applaud you for defending your staff, because that's what a boss should do. So again, I applaud you for that. But again, just asking that if there's some room for improvement. And so with that, yeah. So with that, unless there's any questions of me,
I have some comments I'd like to direct, and that is, without you and your brother Robert, we probably would have never noticed these things that were missing regarding the bullpens not being constructed and being fully paid for. I would like to express, and I'm taken aback that collectively we're not heralding your guys' efforts and diligence and persistence to the level it should be. I want to tell you thank you, and thank you again. You guys do some incredible work. You provide some very professional requests in terms of items that need to be scrutinized. And as a board, that's really where we should be. And for you guys to take that upon yourselves is greatly appreciated. What you mentioned in terms of expertise is unrivaled in terms of what it is that we've looked at, that you guys have found. So it is greatly appreciated by some of us. And I'm sorry to say that, because I think a lot of what's been going on when we brought up, a more comprehensive way of looking at it, and even creating the possibility of creating a committee with you guys on it to make sure that the diligence is at the level that you guys can perform, has fallen by the wayside. I'm disappointed with that, but I want to express to you what you do for the kids, what you do for the district, what you do for the taxpayers is greatly appreciated. And I hope we can rival you in showing that attention.
Well, Mr. Udiana, thank you for that. And again, I'll speak for myself, but again, thank you. We're not, I'm not here to stir trouble up. I'm just here that I see that there's some things wrong. I'm bringing it to the attention of others. But at the same time, when I bring it to the attention of others, I'm not just saying this is what I see wrong. I'm also coming with some recommendations as to what can be done. So again, like I said, I'm not here to stir up trouble, just seeing, hoping that the district can move forward. And again, as a volunteer, as a Cobre alum, whose kids have graduated from here, what I'm after is that Cobre be back to where they were back in the 70s, the 80s. And, if I can do a small part or play a small part in doing that, I'm more than happy to do so.
And I apologize for leaving out your work in the Finance Committee. That's also greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
I would like to add on to what Mr. Guadiana said, that I do appreciate you and your brother for bringing this information to us. You have an expertise, and I think as an education system, it's important that we lean on those who have expertise in these areas. And in the words of John Lewis, sometimes you gotta make some good trouble. So, thank you.
Thank you. Items for next agenda. Right now I have one item, FH.
So I have board retreat, the SEG final unit value, an executive session to review legal fees, achievement award, right, Mr. Cordova? That's what you said it was called, achievement award, and then strategic plan and possibly starting policy review. I'll visit with John and see what our timeline is on that.
Is some of that going to be talked at the work session, Joyce?
These things here, no.
No?
Not the plan at this time, no. Because the strategic plan would be a different work session
Okay.
with different people. Right now, we're looking at more as finance moving forward.
Okay.
So with the strategic plan, could you also include the self-evaluation, the board self-evaluation?
As a discussion item, or?
To conduct a self-evaluation?
That's what I'm saying, would it be because the strategic plan, we would have CES come and do a presentation on what it would entail. So for the strategic plan, do you want it as just a discussion item by the board, or I'm not sure where I'm putting it?
It should precede it. I think the discussion on the strategic plan should take into account where we are as a board in terms of what it is we do.
Right, but that's what I'm saying with the strategic plan. He will do his presentation of what it will entail.
I understand. What I'm saying is it should precede go first before the strategic plan.
Right, so that's why I'm asking you. So do you want it as an action item? Is it going to be discussed as a work session to do the strategic plan? That's why I'm just trying to figure out where it's going to go on the agenda.
There's no action needed. It doesn't pass or fail. It's a matter of we rate ourselves. And our policies have what the criteria is to be evaluated. As far as
Correct. So are you asking that the board conduct their self-evaluation at the next board meeting, or just still discussion about when that's going to happen? That's what I'm trying to get at.
That it do that at the next meeting.
To do it at the
Yes, to do it at the next meeting.
Mr. President, I do remind you that a self-evaluation of the board is exactly what it says, self-evaluation. You don't evaluate the board as a whole, I evaluate myself, and that's it.
Yes, that's what the board self-evaluation is, that you evaluate yourself, how you've been doing. And right now, I don't know how we can, Serena and Mr. Molina can do that.
Exactly.
That's why I say that we should probably, with the board self-evaluation, we could do it at the board retreat. I don't know.
The interpretation of self-evaluation to be one of individual, it could see, if it said board member self-evaluation, that's one thing, but board evaluation is more of the body as opposed to the individual. And we had put it off because we were thinking that we should wait till the new board's here so they could see where that is. And now it's being used as an argument for convenience of delaying it even further. It's been, I don't know how long. I know for the 4 years I've been here, it's never happened. And it's good information to have.
Yes.
Why would we put off on having it?
Excuse me, the forms are, Mr. Sepulveda has the forms already, and you'll look at them and see what they say.
Do they relate to the policy?
Ask him.
Are they reflective of the policy?
Yes.
Okay.
Those are some of the ones that the state send me.
No. There's some that are in our policy that say this is what we evaluate. And that's what we should stay to. That's what the policy is.
Bring out the policy number to see it.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
So there is, in the board section of the policy, there is 131P, which is, P means procedure. It's not, the actual policy, it's just a procedure.
Yeah, not a policy.
Right.
But it also mentions the items that should be discussed.
So it just says that so on the actual policy part of it, it says the board, the Cobre Consolidated School Districts Board of Education shall have an annual retreat as deemed necessary for self-evaluation and to set goals for itself and the superintendent, which again, part of the strategic plan would be to set the goals.
But it says to do it at the board retreat. That can be done at the board retreat. So that can be done at the board retreat when we
Right, and that's again part of what, when he comes and does the presentation, because the setting of the goals is the big part of the strategic plan.
Yes. Okay. The other thing for next meeting will be the board reorganization. And anything else? motion to adjourn. We're adjourned. Thank you.